When it comes to offering items that give you passive perks, most games either make them glorified collectibles that just serve as an extension of the already existing skill tree, or they're special items locked until New Game Plus to begin with. So for Dead Rising to give you such powerful items from the get-go is a truly unique system in an already pretty unique game. It can give an edge to newer players, it helps add some depth to a series of otherwise really simple systems, and it offers a good deal of experimentation for new playthroughs, regardless of the player's level, which is why it's a shame they're rarely talked about beyond triple booking the small chainsaw. How many players even know that you can triple book the scythe as well? How many people have turned the weapons card into a longer lasting version of the white sedan? Does anyone else know that the mannequin torso can be made to last 450 hits? So with how most people don't even talk about the books, the fact there's no tier list on them is hardly surprising. It's also unacceptable. I spent hours messing around with each book to get a feel for their perks and the effects on the gameplay. I also did some calculations when necessary. This isn't me trying to act like my opinion is objective just because I made some objective observations. I just want this list to account for more than my playstyle. There's a lot of different reasons to play Dead Rising after all. I have the full list of requirements on screen right now, but a general rule to keep in mind is that the more a book can do on its own, the higher it's going to rank. Thankfully, since books don't have any downsides, this means there's no F tiers. But man, it's hardly a 24-way tie for first place. So sit back, get a drink, put on your happy face, and get ready for some light reading. Boo! So I'll admit, it can be pretty fun to just grab a bunch of the toy cubes and go to town on herds of zombies, but that's as useful as this book gets, and even that's not a practical strategy. The toy cubes stop locking on as early as 4 zombies, compared to the soccer ball's 8 targets. And they do less damage by default, so Frank really needs his range damage to be maxed out to reliably kill even common zombies. The toy cubes also only spawn in Wonderland Plaza, so this isn't exactly an ideal improvised weapon most of the time. And that's the highlight of this book. The boomerang's fun and all, but in terms of using it practically, if you have enough room to wait for this thing to come back to you without a zombie sneaking up on you and giving you a love bite, you probably have enough room to just walk around the zombies in the first place. Then there's the Frisbee, which can kill zombies with a headshot at level 50, but that's because you're throwing a weapon at level 50. With maxed out range damage, anything you throw instantly kills with a headshot, which includes plates and CDs, which, first of all, give you 30 shots compared to the 15 this book gives the Frisbee, and you don't have to retrieve them. Also, unlike the Frisbee, they deal actual damage. Yeah, the Frisbee, if it doesn't hit them square in the forehead, just knocks them over, which means you have to retrieve it next to a very angry zombie that you just hit in the face with plastic. Then there's the Rat Stick, which takes forever to kill zombies, especially at night, and throwing it means you have to wait for the bleed out effect, which combined with the low damage it does when thrown, means you're going to be waiting a decent amount of time. Also, the durability barely puts this thing over the standard lead pipe, which is literally just a better version of the Rat Stick and way more common. There's the toy laser sword, which in theory is useful, except no. Let's take a moment to ignore how the 2016 ports made them all brighter at night so you could naturally see, a choice I honestly prefer actually. In the best case circumstance, this is something that you can only use to light up the way. Its actual combat usage is awful. The zombies can almost get up faster than you can whack them with it. You're just going to get surrounded trying to use this thing. And it already lasts for 80 hits by default. Yeah, this thing is built to last. That is to say nothing of the fact that this thing won't even light up if you're not in the night version of that part of the mall, but that's a rant for another day. Finally, there's the novelty helmets. So for these things, take that lackluster durability for the Frisbee or the Rat Stick, and combine it with the impracticality and outright misuse of the item with the toy laser sword. Not of any practical use outside of showing off that you're at level 50. Only good for showing off when you're at level 50. That's this book in a nutshell, and it's the reason it's the sole E tier of the list. And now for the complete opposite direction. Camera 2 offers the player the incredibly useful ability to double all PP from photos. Given that the camera can earn 500 to 1000 prestige points for a single good shot, that's actually a really nice effect. What results in Camera 2 being this low on the list, damn near the bottom, is that it's locked behind Kent's mission, meaning nearly every photo opportunity is long since past. Nearly all the bosses are dead. There's literally one survivor who spawns after this mission. If you're going for the true ending, you'll be too busy with the game itself to take pictures of just about anything. And if you're not, there's really nothing left to take pictures of except if you already saved Cheryl or want to get some of the prestige point stickers you haven't found yet. You're probably also going to be level 30 by now if you plan to take on Kent, unless you got lucky. So standard pictures might not even cut it for you at this point with that 100% bonus. To be fair, you can still use it for what little time is left in the game, just not to great use, which for a psychopath reward is a bit of a deal killer. Kinda has the same problem the Meat Cleaver does now that I think about it. There's also already 2 books that, when combined, give you a 50% boost to PP from a much earlier point in the game, so players who want to level up with pictures already have had a good way to do so, further limiting the use of this book. And if this run you're not seeing Kent's mission to the end, you're not using this book at all. Finally, and this holds true for all the PP books in the game, is that you really don't get any use for them once you reach level 50. If boss unlocks carried into New Game Plus, this might have actually gotten close to the top 10, because in theory, it is that good. But in practice, there's really nothing left to use it with. Leaves it really only better than the book that's meant for literal playtime. I'm convinced Weekly Photo Magazine has actually had its effects changed from an earlier version. The description makes it sound like it was originally required for photo opportunity markers to appear at all. This would actually line up with other skill books like cooking or skateboarding. This appears to have been made a default ability in the final build, and I have trouble imagining that Stippo wouldn't have found something by now related to this in the other builds he has. But hey, if my theory's actually correct and this was changed, then I think it was a change for the better for the sake of new players, but it really hurt the book in the long run. Its current perk of simply letting the player know what kind of photo a subject will count as is not actually all that helpful, since the kind of photo is often irrelevant. There's no achievements for certain types of photos, mixing and matching different emotions doesn't net you more PP. Aside from giving Kent a photo of Jesse's boobs and thighs, there's no call for a certain kind of photo in the game. Well, speaking of Kent, that is at least one of its better uses. It gives you a good idea of what is and isn't erotic. But it also highlights one of the bigger problems with the book. It lights up something when it's visible to Frank, not when it's able to be registered by a picture. This will become a problem if you're trying to get a particular kind of shot with survivors, and you'll be confused as to why certain things are not getting marked despite it being highlighted by the book. Ironically, this book is not actually very helpful at getting you to take better pictures. This book's effect does actually make it a half-decent radar. The blue marker lets players know what zombies are actively looking for something to munch on, and the green markers let them know if they're holding something. A shopping cart, a propane tank, a queen. That last one is really useful in overtime mode, trust me. It's also what places it above the other 2 books, if I'm being honest. It's the only saving grace of it. The bicycle is a nifty little item that never truly returns in the later games, so having a book that increases its durability 3-fold while giving you extra tricks to perform sounds nice. And to be fair, it is nice. The problem is there's only 2 bikes in the entire game, one in the entrance plaza and another in Alfresca Plaza, and unlike the skateboard, the bike is a vehicle. Sure, it means it doesn't take up inventory, but it means you can't pick it up to begin with. It won't leave Alfresca Plaza no matter how hard you try, and the one in the entrance plaza can only go to Paradise Plaza and the movie theater. This does mean you can use it to just Zerg rush your way through the Raincoat Cult when you want to face Sean, so that's cool. The one in Alfresca Plaza also makes getting the Gordon a bit easier if you plan to save him. However, that's more of a positive to the bike itself. The book's two main benefits are that it triples the durability and allows you to jump when using it. But aside from these two examples, the bike's too limited in where it can go. Not helped by the fact that for the one in the entrance plaza, it takes so long to get to, you can probably just walk to where you'd ride it to, so it's really only good for the Raincoat Cult in that case. Or, better yet, just go upstairs to the second floor in Paradise or Entrance and get a skateboard. While not as bad as the hobby book in this regard, the bike just doesn't benefit that greatly from the increased durability or the ability to jump like the skateboard does. The skateboard by default is just made of fiberglass, and the ability to jump over obstacles means you don't have to slow down. The bike already lasts for 100 hits, so it has the durability to do a few collisions here and there. And again, because of how limited it is where you can go, odds are you'll get where you need to go before it gives out. You can't cover enough distance to really justify needing that extra durability. If you could find the bike in a few more places in the mall, like Wonderland Plaza and Leisure Park, this book probably would have ranked at least a bit higher. However, honestly, regardless of that, it should have been merged with skateboarding. I feel like I'm about to upset some people with this one. This book is locked behind defeating Cliff, and that's half the reason it ranks this low. Much like with Camera 2, you're just too limited in where you can use this book. You can't make use of it for the first few psychopaths in the game, severely limiting its use in a no-weapon challenge starting from level 1. The moments the players are forced to use their bare hands, like fighting the cultist, Kent's betrayal, or, just fighting Brock, all these situations remove your inventory to begin with, so it doesn't help you there either. It's also not even that helpful for increasing your unarmed combat. Now sure, a level 50 Frank can now beat a zombie to death with his bare hands, and given how fast he punches, that's actually not that bad. But in terms of his skill moves, the karate chop and jump kick still can't one-shot most night zombies reliably, or even cultists outside of a lucky blow to the head. Execution moves, like the neck twist or disembowel, they already kill zombies by default, and the same is true for crowd clearers like the giant swing, the hammer toss, or the double lariats. Finally, I can't even say that it helps you all that much against bosses. Frank already has a lot of moves like the somersault kick that can do a stupid amount of damage without the aid of this book. If this book had some strong secondary effect, like giving you permanent Spitfire so long as you hold it, or doubling the prestige points from skill moves, well, probably would have gotten a lot higher. This book is literally useless after the single mission it's used in. The core defense against this, well, outright fact, is that you actually need the book to complete the mission. So, objectively, it's more useful than the 5 books on the list already, right? Well, I have a few less smart-ass reasons as to why this book is not the worst. Part of it is just that Torst is not a very interesting mission without it. Take away the language barrier and some of the funny dialogue that Shinji and Yu, I think that's how you pronounce their names, say, and it's just another example of talk to the survivor till they come with you. A rather dull approach to side questing that the first Dead Rising, outside of a few creative examples, was rather guilty of. But more importantly, I think that this is a really good tutorial for books. There's a real chance that players have ignored bookstores up until this point, so having a mission and a book devoted to teaching that I think is very important. And, unlike most tutorials, it doesn't hamper new playthroughs. The book's right there where you need it, you can grab it before you talk to them, allowing you to actually skip dialogue and get the mission done faster. And since this mission is right next to Out of Control, you're gonna be here anyway. I'm not trying to convince you this book is any more than what it is. It literally is just a tutorial for a mechanic that players may not have used yet. But it's non-intrusive, it's very straightforward, and it makes a mission more interesting. Not enough to make it to C tier, but unlike a lot of the books in D tier, Japanese conversation does what it needs to do, and it doesn't need to do much. Sometimes Dead Rising gives 2 books with the same effect. This is actually a benefit to the player. There's more than one place to find that particular perk if the player is looking for it, and you can equip both books to double up or at least combine the effects since perks stack. And of all the books to have doubles, these 2 are the weakest. To explain this,
I'm afraid we need to use math.
this book would be at its most useful when going for zombie genocide or at a fairly low level. Not sure how often that happens, but I'll roll with it. Frank can receive 500 PP for every 50 zombies killed, and an extra 20,000 PP for every 1,000 zombies killed. Let's assume the player kills 60,000 zombies during their playthrough going for that achievement. That means there will be 1,200 small bonuses and 60 mega bonuses. That breaks down to a total of 1,800,000 PP, with that number going up to 2,700,000 PP. An extra 900,000 PP isn't anything to be upset with, but this is an extraordinary situation, an achievement that takes a full playthrough to be done no matter when you do it. And you gotta do it no later than Frank's level being at 40. Wait any longer than that and the bonuses only get you to level 50 faster, not get you to level 50 when you otherwise wouldn't. That is something that, at best, a player's only gonna do once. I've never heard of anyone starting the game over from scratch intentionally just to get Zombie Genocider again, just to unlock the Mega Buster. But I mean, hey, if you're in that situation, no reason not to, I guess. But for people going through a more standard playthrough, keep in mind that you can get 2,856,000 PP from just saving all the survivors. And that's without any book effects. You also get an extra 505,000 PP from the psychopaths. Every cultist gives you 500 PP, the special forces give you 5,000. So there's faster ways to level up Frank beyond killing zombies. And if you need just a few more thousand PP for a level up and can't find any survivors, just throw a queen into a horde of zombies and photograph their heads exploding. Outside of newer players relying on zombie kills for level ups, these books are really outclassed by the other ways to earn PP, and the books that enhance said ways. If you're doing a level 1 run, you're either confident enough that you don't need to be at level 50, or you've optimized your routes enough to where you can reach level 50 without killing zombies en masse. But there is an appeal here, no matter how niche it is, and you don't have to get too far in the game to get both books. That's nice. Hey, you know what we haven't had in a while? A book you get by defeating a psychopath that's given too late in the game to live up to its true potential.
Oh, my favorite.
Yeah, brainwashing tips being this low is probably weird for some people. But to explain why, we need to carefully reread that description for this book. Survivors no longer fear death and readily charge into danger. This is not Dead Rising 2's leadership. In fact, it's quite the opposite. While leadership would only remove the physical downsides of survivors, and the player only had to deal with their personality quirks, brainwashing tips turns every survivor into Kendall, violent and loyal. What this means is that any survivors who are physically handicapped in some way are really no different besides not freezing up in fear, which is a moot point half the time since you still need to manually escort the injured anyway. This limitation, combined with how late you get it, is why it's so low. There are only 16 survivors left to be saved at this point, counting Sean's hostages. Gil and Susan need to be manually escorted, and Cheryl and Mindy can't be given weapons, so the extra aggression for them is of little use. On top of that, Tad and Simone are so close to the safe house that the book really doesn't matter and you don't even need to give them weapons. So you're really just making 10 of the final survivors easier to save. But hey, even at max level, it's common for people to try to save all the survivors anyway, so no reason not to use this book once you get it, especially if you have the inventory for it. This book could really use a better name, because I don't know a single person building a fence in their living room. Okay, real talk. This feels like it's meant to complement Lifestyle Magazine, another book in the game. But while that book works with the common items found inside buildings, this one only works with the furniture. And furniture, more often than not, does not fit in Frank's inventory, meaning that you can't really take most of this anywhere, and you drop it if something so much as slaps you. However, there are two things that hold this book up as high as it is, or at least not as low as it is. The first is the Mannequin Torso, which can one-shot zombies reliably at level 1, and at level 50, even nighttime zombies often die to a single blow. And it lasts for 50 hits without a book. And since every piece of the mannequin is affected by this book, and since 2 mannequins spawn right outside the safe house, this means that every run can begin with weapons that last for 150 hits with this book alone. And second, while furniture is never exactly the long-term answer, it can be deadly with just a few attack upgrades, so it makes a good improvised weapon if you're good with the timing of heavy attacks. And on New Game Plus runs especially, the player can easily just jump into a store, pick up a chair, and make some space from the undead, and Dead Rising kind of encourages you to restart and carry your levels over if you're struggling. And I think it's safe to say that a player who is struggling is probably the player who's going to benefit the most from getting more out of the furniture. So hey, if you are that kind of struggling player who needs to constantly run into a store and get a weapon to defend themselves, this book might not be bad to have. Of course, just stocking up on mannequin torsos is probably better, and this isn't the only book that works with that item. Okay, this is a weird one. Instead of doubling the effect duration of mixed drinks, this allows you to create double-lasting mixed drinks. Trust me, that wording makes all the difference. It means that the book does not affect any mixed drinks you've already made or looted off a hostile enemy in the infinite mode, making this book useless in said mode. But on the other hand, it means that the effect to the drink is permanently applied once it's created, making this the only book in the game, actually to my knowledge in the franchise, where you can reap the benefits even after you drop it, so long as you made the drink while holding it. So, you can quickly run into Entrance Plaza, grab this book, go back to Paradise, make the drinks, and then drop the book. This is really helpful in overtime mode if you just want to make quick steps and get around real fast. In fact, it's better than the skateboard at that point. It does mean you have to beat Carlito a second time to use it, but this book is also the only way Energizer is ever worth using. So while most players won't carry this book for their entire run, it can be quickly adapted into nearly any playstyle, provided you have a single inventory slot to use. And, of course, provided you use mixed drinks in the first place. Skateboarding is just cycling, but for an actually useful item. The skateboard itself is just inherently useful. They spawn indefinitely in Paradise Plaza and the Entrance Plaza, and they fit in your inventory to boot. So not only can you always have one, you can take it basically anywhere. The ability to perform tricks also helps avoid one of the biggest problems with the skateboard: momentum. Since you normally have to move around obstacles in the mall, but you can't risk running into zombies, this normally means getting off your board and having to walk around or over something, then getting back on. The time spent stopping and starting really starts to add up, as does the time you save by just jumping over things in the first place. So the tricks are very useful. But the durability buff is what makes this book king of the C tiers, as well as forever locked out of B tier. While tripling the durability is nice and all, 3x3 is just 9, and 9 hits in Dead Rising isn't much. The skateboard is going to need at least a second book to have the durability necessary for those longer trips through the mall, especially places like North Plaza. Ignoring my dislike for the idea of a book only affecting one item in the first place, this leaves skateboarding in a very strange place. If you want to use a skateboard, this book is probably going in your inventory. But if you're using a skateboard, this book alone probably isn't going to cut it. And if you're not using a skateboard, this book is useless. I guess the old saying's true. The jack of all trades is the master of none, but often more useful than the master of only one. The main use of this book is actually pretty similar to skateboarding. Make use of shopping carts to get around the mall faster. They don't fit in your inventory, and they're a little more clunky to move around, and you don't get tricks with them, but the sheer durability this book gives them, a whopping 135, which is more than the skateboard when triple booked, and the fact that they're just so common, yeah, if you're a low-level player, this is probably a preferable way to get around. And on top of that, it still gets better as you get higher level, if for no other reason than you can carry other things besides this in a shopping cart, like the perfume prop, a decent little improvised weapon, at least when you get Frank to a high enough level.
But wait! There's more! Hang on to your seat, baby!
The weapons cards. This thing already lasts 300 hits, which is more than you'll ever realistically use it for, but it goes to a ridiculous 900 hits with this book. That is just the best kind of stupid, if you ask me. On the not-so-good kind of stupid, you can't really use this thing if you want to save survivors. Ignoring the real chance you might accidentally run them over and kill them with it, you gotta babysit survivors in this game, which actually means going too fast becomes a detriment. Skateboards fit in your inventory, and shopping carts are very replaceable. So unfortunately, the super durable weapons card is more of just a fun mess-around thing than an actual strategy. Oh yeah, I almost forgot, this weapon works with the pickaxe. It's not a bad weapon either. Wartime Photography feels like the name of the book that Kent should have dropped, but that's not terribly important. What is important is that Camera 1 is available literally right away, like as soon as you get to Paradise Plaza properly. And with all the PP stickers in Paradise Plaza and the food court that you're about to enter, that 25% boost can make a big difference early game in terms of PP. It can also help with Kent's photo challenges, and you don't need to beat Kent in order to get it. And once Case 2-2 is active, Wartime Photography becomes available. That's a 50% boost to photos if you carry both, which means that photo opportunities now give you an extra 5,000 PP if you get a good shot. There's really not a whole lot to actually say about these two books. Do you like taking photos, or are you having trouble with Kent's mission? Pick these up. Entertainment works with both the small chainsaw and the skateboard. Combine both of those with criminal biology and skateboarding to completely trivialize the game. But if you're not interested in breaking the game in half, what else does it boost? Well, there are the TVs, which are decent improvised weapons but are shockingly uncommon. There are the bowling balls, but they use the rock's unwieldy overhead smash. They're every bit as lethal as a rock, though, and they get the funniest range attack in the game. But who needs balls when you have guitars? These things are deadly, if not a bit awkward, last twice as long as the lead pipe, have some of the best heavy attacks in the game, and with this book, they can outlast most boss weapons, which is good, because they only spawn in Paradise Plaza. Doing this whole tier list made me realize Dead Rising 1 doesn't spread its weapons out as well as its sequels did, and that plays a major role in what one of the best books in the game is. Seriously, why are there no acoustic guitars in the Wild West themed food court? So instead of the usual gameplay montage I've been doing thus far, I'm just going to let the math speak for itself on this one. I'm also going to assume that the benefit of getting 6 extra levels from a book is self-explanatory, and instead I want to give some basic facts that influenced its placement on the list. Survivors are the most constant and consistent sources of prestige points. Survivors also give the highest overall PP values of any one activity, making this the single most profitable PP booster in the game, despite this being the only one without duplicates. This book also just benefits from how popular a level 1 save all survivors run is. On the downside, once you've saved every survivor, this book is useless as it does not affect hostile enemy defeats, mutinies, or even requests. This makes it the only prestige point booster that is completely useless in overtime mode. And like the other PP boosters, it's of no use once you reach level 50. Believe it or not, given my personal playstyle, World News is my favorite book in the game, but favoritism is not enough to make it to A tier, as this book is just too limited to put it any higher than where it is. The baseball bat is the real reason this book is so high. It is one of the best weapons in the game, reliably kills zombies during the day, knocks zombies away that you don't kill so you can jump kick them or outright avoid them after the fact, and it's a pretty common weapon. One spawns right outside the safe house, there's 3 sports stores in different areas of the mall, making it easy to find. You can get some in the park if you really need to, and they appear in trash cans from time to time. Not sure why, but I'm not complaining. How about the soccer ball? You can find 3 of them on the rooftops, and they can serve as a recyclable queen of sorts. A way to thin out the horde, and you can even reuse it if you manage to find where it flies off to. And if you just want to kill zombies a bit longer before having to restock, some of the lesser used but still strong weapons in the game like the dumbbell, barbell, and pickaxe are also boosted by this. Or you could just combine this with the entertainment magazine for bowling balls of steel. Of all the books to make it to the top 5, I doubt anyone expected this one. Myself included. The first draft of this script had me making this joke to introduce the top 10, actually. So what did this book do to get this high? Well, in short, nothing special. It just works well with a lot of weapons. 22 to be exact. That's more than any other book in the game, and it's not even close. One of those weapons is the badass mannequin torso that I've already talked about with interior design, so I won't stand for that one any longer. So instead, here's just a quick rundown of some of the highlights from this catalog. Every chair and stool, which are fairly common heavy weapons that can be used in a desperate situation. The hedge trimmers. While I find triple booking these to be more of a meme strat, having at least one last 3 times as long means that you're basically untouchable to the common zombie, day or night. The lawnmower goes. The paint cans are just decent improvised weapons, and plywood is one of the most deadly heavy weapons in the game if you actually find some. But when it comes to the real winners here, that goes to the sickle, which is actually a scythe, but on top of it being able to be triple booked, it's one of the only decent prestige point earners, and it can absolutely wreck hordes of zombies even at a low level. One of the best weapons beyond the mannequin torso this book affects. Quick little aside, although it's not one of the more powerful weapons in the game, the stepladder is a good anti-psychopath weapon due to its extended range as a melee weapon. It's also affected by this book. But overall, while this may not be as fancy as making the small chainsaw last forever, or being able to do a Tony Hawk run of the game, if you're playing Dead Rising and you want to improvise a weapon, Lifestyle Magazine will probably affect it more often than not. It's just viable on a lot of loadouts. Simple as that. This one is simple. Every weapon this book affects is good. Some better than others, but all of them are good. Lead pipes and 2x4 are just reliable and easy to find weapons, all around North Plaza especially, but the warehouse spawns one as well. There's also the chainsaw, the small chainsaw, the excavator, the hedge trimmers, the sickle, but most importantly, the sledgehammer. All in all, its benefits are pretty straightforward. Really good weapons that are more common than many others, thanks in no small part to North Plaza. And since the second half of the game may as well take place in North Plaza almost exclusively, making most of the weapons there last 3 times as long is just common sense. Carry one of these for a 50% healing bonus, carry both for a 100% healing bonus. Simple as that, never a bad time to have one or both. One thing to keep in mind is a visual quirk with Dead Rising's UI. Each block of health equals 1,000 points of health, but the block is only removed when you're missing all 1,000 points it represents. This means that when recovery values are increased by 50% and you start getting values of 500, it'll sometimes seem like a small snack heals you for 2, but then the next only heals you for 1. That's not a bug, that's just the exact healing values not being easy to read. Literally the only reason it's not an S tier is that, with there being 2 of them, some players might want to wait until they have more room to spare before grabbing one or both. The last 2 books that did make it to S tier do not have that issue. To the surprise of absolutely no one who's actually played the game, bladed weapons are absolutely overpowered in the first Dead Rising, and this book is mainly the reason why. Literally every area in the mall has a bladed weapon of some kind, between the knife-wielding zombies, trash cans that drop knives somewhat frequently, and most restaurants having cleavers that are functionally the same as the hunting knives. Just pick up a knife with this book, and you have 60 swipes. That's 30 to 60 zombie kills, depending on Frank's level and the time of day. There's also things like the katana that spawns in Paradise Plaza, which can one-shot regular zombies, as well as dealing decent damage against psychopaths. The chainsaws in the hardware stores that let you just mow through crowds, the hedge trimmers I brought up for easy horde defense, the entrance plaza having battle axes, and of course... Oh yeah, I almost forgot. 4 of the 5 unique boss drops are bladed weapons. This book makes them go from 100 to 300 hits, which, when combined with everything else I just said here, basically means you will never run out of powerful weapons when you hold this book. This is the most useful durability book in the game, hands down. Okay, I've been harsh to the other books that you get from defeating psychopaths, but that's just because I think their effects are a bit too specialized for how difficult they can be to get. Once you beat Kent, there's nothing left to take pictures of, so a book about pictures isn't really useful. And once you defeat Cliff, not only is wrestling very underpowered as I brought up, but you also have access to the machete, and there's already a book to make that last 3 times as long. It will almost always be a better option. So, what does survival do? Well, double healing. There is literally never a reason to not have that effect. But, okay, let me paint a better picture. You have just defeated Cliff, and you got the keys to the room that he hides the survivors in the books in, and you find survival. Here are the 4 possible outcomes. 1. You didn't have either health book, and now you can double any healing item for just 1 inventory slot. 2. You had one of the health books, and now you can replace that with survival, doubling the practicality of that book. 3. You had both health books, but now you can replace them with a single book giving you the same effect, freeing up a single inventory slot. 4. You had one or both of the health books, and now you can add survival to it and become Goku. You eat everything in sight, and you basically can't die. Then there's the infinite mode, that mode where your health is constantly draining and you try to survive as long as possible. There's an achievement for lasting 7 days in there. At best, you're gonna be really cutting it close without this book. But more importantly, this book alone doubles your chances to do so, gives you much more legroom. You can get all 3 books if you want to just go total overkill, or potentially go for the world record 17 days. But in terms of 7-day survivor, and by extension 5-day survivor, which gives you the actually good reward, you only need survival for it. So, between the fact that more healing is good in basically any build, the fact that you can magnify or outright replace the effects of 2 of the best books in the game single-handedly, and all but literally being required for the game's hardest achievement, well, if there's a better book in Dead Rising, I'm all ears. Well, I made a tier list for the books, so I may as well make one for the skill moves as well. Just for the formalities, this is based on the 2016 port of Dead Rising 1, Xbox One version if that matters to you. The 3 default abilities of Frank, punching, kicking, and spitting, will not be counted. Neither will any abilities gotten from books, and I'm not counting the zombie walk. That's just a bonus for reaching level 50 rather than a tactical skill you're meant to make use of. That leaves us with 20 skill moves. Don't expect this to be a 40-minute video like last time. But regardless of the running time, sit back, grab a drink, and put on your happy face. It's time to start.
Boo! You stink!
You might say that the suplex getting F tier is overreacting, and you might not be entirely wrong. But the reason I give it that is simply because I believe its exclusion would be to the game's benefit. The game already has 3 moves that share this input, so Frank's positioning determines which move you do. Now, when you accidentally do the lift up or the hammer toss when you meant to do the other, it's annoying, but you achieve the same general thing. When you do the suplex when you meant to do the hammer toss or vice versa, yeah, that actually is detrimental. I shouldn't have to explain the downside of throwing a zombie backwards when you meant to throw it forwards, or throwing it forwards if for whatever reason you wanted to throw it backwards. Worse yet though is that there's very little reason to ever use the suplex. You can only attack zombies behind Frank. You don't have enough time to do a full 180 and attack what was normally in front of you. And if the zombies are already behind you, then you don't really need to kill them, just keep walking forward at that point. If the suplex had a unique button combination, it would be E tier, maybe D tier at most, but since you could very well accidentally perform it when you try to do something else, that is what pushes it into the game would be better off without it camp. The neck twist is easily the most gruesome move in the first Dead Rising. It's a shame that it's easily the least useful as well. It's not a detriment to Frank's moveset like, let's say, the suplex is. You're not going to perform it by accident, but you're probably not going to perform it period on most playthroughs. You can only perform this move on a downed zombie, so you have to knock one over without killing it, which in and of itself is shockingly hard. Once you max out your attack power, during the day, you will kill the toughest zombies in 2 kicks. But at night, they're so aggressive they get up before you have a chance to get over them and use the execution on them. The same goes for the cultists and the special forces any time of day. And if you found a zombie that you've already knocked to the floor, why use this instead of the giant swing? At least the move looks cool. The wall kick is useful for getting down from a higher elevation without taking fall damage, but there's only a handful of places in the mall where you can do that to begin with, and while it is Frank's most powerful move, the lack of control and lack of range on ground level means that you're not going to be able to make much actual practical use of this move. Nice if the situation calls for it, but it's a situation you'll seldom find yourself in. Unimpressive, but not useless. If you can absolutely master the timing with the football tackle and chain your attacks together by pressing the attack button, I believe the moment before you hit a zombie, this can theoretically be a better way to get through the horde than the zombie ride. That's in theory. In practice, the timing is so ridiculously strict that you'll almost never be able to pull it off correctly. And on top of that, you relinquish a lot of control when doing this move. You don't choose the direction Frank follows up with the chain attacks with, he'll just auto-lock onto a new zombie. Sure, he prioritizes what's already in front of you, but if there's a zombie approaching from the side that's closer, he's gonna go for that, which might actually put you back into the horde. Oh, and on top of that, its damage output just flat out sucks, even at level 50. If you ask me, this move is not worth the time investment it takes to be viable, and even when you know how to use it, it is not worth the lack of control.
Hoo-yah!
So, allow me to explain how the karate chop actually works. When Frank attacks, it applies the chop effect to them. Not the bisection effect, the chop effect. Bisection can cut a zombie apart at any angle and will instantly kill them. Chopping, on the other hand, can only remove a limb, and doesn't do any extra damage than the attack already would. Given that most of the weapons that apply the chop are boss weapons, this is usually just a cosmetic effect. This is where the karate chop is at its most useful, and at its most limited. If the limb that you happen to chop off is the head and you get that decapitation, you feel like Kung Fury. If you only manage to hit an arm, on the other hand, and then the zombie gets up as if you just shoved it, you start to feel more like Funny Mustache Man. So while this move can't reliably kill zombies, it does reliably knock them away, which is what puts it into C tier. I wouldn't recommend just going into a horde and trying to chop away. You're gonna get bit doing that.
Be gone, fucks!
I'm throwing all 3 of these together because they do fundamentally the same thing. Quickly escape from a zombie, kill the attacker, and take a few surrounding zombies out while you're at it. Honestly, I never find a reason to use these moves intentionally, and the time it takes to pull off the analog movements to do them, I can just shake the control stick around like a madman and break free that way. Frank's normal way of getting rid of zombies, just pushing them back and making some space, is usually more than enough. But when I do pull off these moves, and it happens surprisingly often despite my Neanderthal approach, it's always useful. I never go out of my way to perform these, and I'm never upset when I do perform them.
Wow, my head's spinning!
Every problem with the neck twist still applies to the giant swing. But on the plus side, the giant swing is a more useful move. Its range is genuinely amazing, but on the other hand, its damage output isn't that impressive. Even at level 50, it will often not kill zombies. Combine that with the fact that you're left dizzy if you use this move for too long, and it's not one I personally go to. But it does have its uses, particularly with medium-sized hordes.
Now that's a lot of damage!
By itself, the roundhouse kick is actually really unimpressive. The fact that you have to jump and the very strict timing for when you land makes it a very impractical of-the-moment move. Where the roundhouse kick really starts to shine is when you look at it not as an individual move, but as an extension of moves you already have. If you use the jump kick or dismount from the zombie ride at an awkward point, pressing the button at just the right time will save you from damage you would otherwise take. Sure, you'll often mess up the timing when you first start out, but all that happens is you get bit, which would probably happen if you didn't do anything. And once you get the timing right, any zombie you land right next to is about to have its femur turned into calcium-enriched jelly. On top of that, it's one of the strongest moves Frank has. The somersault kick also makes Frank airborne, so these moves actually can combo into each other, allowing you to just decimate a boss's health bar. Overall, one of the better moves in the game, if you get the timing down right and you learn when it's actually practical to use.
Finish him!
If these two moves could only be used against zombies, they'd be D tier. Very grisly, but not that useful, just easy to pull off. What pushes them to B tier is using them against the special forces. It instantly kills them, and it stops other special forces from shooting at you. I wouldn't recommend this as the go-to strategy against the special forces, but if you wanna, or if you gotta, go for it. It does work. These moves can also one-shot the special forces, but it won't stop their gunfire, so it's not recommended. On the other hand, it completely stops zombies from grabbing you, and they're great ways to kill a large amount of zombies all at once. And let's be real, the zombies are a far more constant threat than the special forces. You can also use them for some creative alternatives to escorting survivors. Oh, I love how stupid this move looks. But its ridiculous nature aside, it's a really effective move on top of one of the first ones you get. One of the best ways to get around a large horde of zombies. Its only real downside is that it's not useful when you're trying to escort survivors, since you normally need to kill the zombies to stop them from getting surrounded.
Excellent!
One of Frank's two unlockable Street Fighter moves, and one of his most powerful in the game. Sure, it doesn't deal a lot of damage against human enemies, but it will almost always one-shot a zombie, even when you first unlock it. It is Frank's best crowd-clearing move in the game, just bar none. It does have two massive downsides, though. The intentional one is that if you have a weapon equipped, it'll eventually break or be flung out of your hand, whichever happens first if you use it. So remember to disarm yourself before using it. The downside I'm not sure was intentional is that it's very easy to get grappled when using this move. Is this intentional, or is it just a bug with how Frank's model in the hitbox works?
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
The only reason this move is not in S tier is because it's annoyingly easy to use by accident. Mostly in the 2016 ports, since analog sticks have gotten way more sensitive and the controls were not adjusted to account for that. It gets real annoying if you're trying to use the chainsaw. But even with that annoyance in mind, this is Frank's best repositioning tool. It's also your only real option in case a boss gets you into a corner. The somersault kick, Frank's other Street Fighter move, and another one of his most powerful. This move is one of the only ones that will always one-shot a zombie since it decapitates them. But more importantly, this thing devastates a psychopath's health bar. Seriously, you can defeat almost every boss in the game with about 10 or so direct hits with this thing. That alone puts it in S tier. If you have a weaker weapon, or if you need to conserve weapon durability, the somersault kick is never a bad option.
Fine!
This is Frank's least impressive skill move. Coincidentally, it's usually the first one. It's also one of Frank's most useful. Yeah, it won't kill zombies at night even at level 50, but the ability to knock them away, and more importantly into each other, is incredibly valuable, and something no other skill move does with the reliability of this one. It also works on the cultists as well. And plus, hey, being able to kill a zombie during the day and knock others over, that's nice. And if nothing else, you can use it to do some quick chip damage to a boss. The jump kick is one of the best examples of something being boring, but practical.
I'm number one!
This move can take out zombies individually, take them out in small groups, especially if combined with the zombie walk, and it can also negate fall damage. And ultimately, that's the best example of what a skill move should be able to do. It gives you a lot more utility. Sure, it's nice you have moves that you can use against bosses to deal a lot of damage, but you have weapons for that. This move, making it so you can safely jump down without getting hurt or kill individual zombies without lowering weapon durability, that is far more useful than, frankly, anything the other skill moves could ever hope to achieve. In that book tier list I did, there was originally an ending that I cut out because it didn't sound natural. But I brought up that I thought the books were very well handled for what amounted to a first attempt. Most of my issues with the books were actually the balancing with the game itself. And while I think the skill moves were handled alright, it definitely reeks more of first attempt, for a few reasons. One is there's a bit of repetition among them. A lot of them are do the same thing but from a different angle. You could drop the suplex and the hammer toss and keep the lift up, and I don't think anyone would be particularly upset. What matters a lot more, though, is the inputs. 7 of the 20 skill moves, 21 if we count the zombie walk, are just press X and A and then be in the right position and or press forward. But if you accidentally run into the zombie, Frank will just go, oh, not perform the skill move, and then you probably get bit. And that's ignoring the times where you might accidentally perform the wrong move if the zombie changes its direction last second. What's bizarre is that it has cases of pressing down on the control stick and a face button, but this control scheme is never used with the Y and B buttons. The game could have easily made it so the execution moves, the neck twist, disembowel, and face crusher, would be hold down the control stick and press Y, and when you do the same combination but with B instead, you get the moves that involve you picking up zombies. Still, warts and all, I am still glad Dead Rising 1 made the attempt it did, even if I personally only find 6 of them to be worth using.
How do you make a food tier list? There's only 6 possible healing values of food items, and mixed drinks are clearly the best options, right? It should be the mixed drinks, then orange juice, then everything else. What's the point? These are the questions I asked myself before even getting the request to do this topic. But after getting this request, I revisited the idea and gave it some more thought, and was able to set some criteria. First, mixed drinks will not appear on the list. I plan to make a tier list for the mixed drinks across all the games in the Dead Rising series. But they did still factor into this list. More on that in a minute. Secondly, spoiled and cooked versions of food items will be lumped in with their raw versions. So, raw beef, spoiled meat, and a well-done steak are treated as the same item. Now, in terms of the actual criteria, the obvious thing is how much does it heal. That's the first factor. But it's not strictly the most important. It also matters how easy the food item is to get a hold of in the first place. A well-done steak heals as much as 6 bag of chips. But you're far more likely to find 6 bag of chips at any part of the mall than you are to find raw meat and then an oven to cook it. But I'm not just looking at the natural respawn locations, but the random possible spawns through the cardboard boxes. Yeah, if you didn't know, every cardboard box in the mall has its own possible inventory, sometimes varying not just from location to location, but the specific stores in each section as well. I also looked at where the food items spawn in the Infinity mode, and what survivor scoops cause what food items to spawn, just to be thorough, though these 2 bits are not nearly as important to their ranking. The final of these 3 major factors are the aforementioned mixed drinks, or more accurately, their recipes. If a food item can be combined with something that is normally around one of the game's many blenders, especially in Paradise Plaza, to make Nectar, Spitfire, Quickstep, Untouchable, or Energizer, that makes the food item way more useful than it would otherwise be. There are some special cases with individual items that help them climb the ranks, but these are the 3 core factors: healing potency, the spawn rate, and the recipe potential. Now that I've given what is easily the stupidest tier list I've done yet the most concrete set of rules I've ever had, I have one question. Who's hungry? This is one of the few food items that will strictly spawn in the supermarket, aside from a few loot drops in the Infinity mode. It only heals for 1 block, and you have literally everything else in the game besides pie to heal with in there. This is a food item you will only ever eat for the gourmet achievement. Also, why did they add red cabbage but not green apples? Am I the only one bothered by that?
Number 15, Burger King foot lettuce.
Lettuce apparently can spawn in cardboard boxes somewhere in the mall, as both of the Dead Rising wikis claim this, but I can't recall a single time it actually happened. It also has a unique model compared to the red cabbage, which is just a purple version of the cabbage. But it also has what is easily the worst model of any food item in the game. Honestly, given how worthless lettuce actually is nutritionally as a vegetable, or in terms of its calories, I'm surprised this heals anything at all.
Would you rather have a radish than sex?
Honestly, these bottom three are interchangeable because they only appear in the supermarket, but I have to give the Radish credit. This is the only action game I can think of where a Daikon Radish is a healing item, or indeed is acknowledged. But these bottom three items really just exist to add some flavor to the world and make the supermarket a little more believable. The Infinity mode does give the Radish a little bit of an edge in that it appears in a few inventory loot drops and it spawns in the home saloon, so it's not the worst of these.
Just eat the damn oranges!
The Hall family dropping 3 of these in the Infinity mode is what saves it from being E tier. Given that you'll probably always have 3 health books in that mode, that's a total of 18 blocks of health right away at the beginning of the mode. That being said, you're only going to find them in the supermarket in 72-hour mode. I swear I remember that the cardboard boxes in the home saloon could drop these, but I wasn't able to recreate it for this video, so I'm not counting that.
From the earth I rise, and to the earth I one day will return.
With corn being found in the food court, you'd think it would be higher than the last 4 by the virtue of the mixed drinks alone. But unfortunately, that's what lowers it. Most of its possible creations are going to be Zombie, a mixed drink you typically don't want to drink. It's also a 1-block healing item, which is normally good for saving your better healing items for later, but you're in the food court, and in 72-hour mode that hardly matters. There's no less than 7 wines in multiple blenders. If you ran out of wine, what were you doing?
I claim this point for France!
Okay, on the food that actually has something to chew on. Baguettes spawn in Jill sandwiches and can appear in cardboard boxes under the backstairs in Paradise Plaza. And a lone one will always be found in the North Plaza and in the movie theater. Unfortunately, the boxes have low spawn rates for them in Paradise Plaza, and once Ronald shows up, Jill sandwiches will no longer spawn any food. This reduces the surrender bread to a rare and not very effective healing item. Its best use in those 2 places is healing, so you can save the bigger and more effective healing items for mixed drinks. So,
That's it, cheese.
Out of all the food exclusive to the supermarket, the cheese makes the least amount of sense. Between the burger shops, the sandwich delis, and the taco stand, cheese should really be more common in the mall. What puts this above the rest is the gun shop trio. Part of their food supply that spawns for their mission is, get this, cheese. And given that there's a real chance you'll get hurt between their gunfire and just the fact you're going to the gun store in North Plaza, having the ability to heal yourself and then save the wine for later is actually kinda useful. Especially since this is a side quest players will not want to restart for if they can avoid it.
Come on out, everyone! Come on! Get your ice cream!
The best thing I can say about the ice pops is that you can heal off them and then use the milk and yogurt for quick step in the blender. They melt too quickly to be a long-term healing item, and the 2 blocks they give you are not worth saving. But getting 2 of them every time you enter the food court makes it pretty easy to get your health back up. And given the very real chance the convicts are outside waiting for you, being at full health and having a lot of quick step in your inventory is actually kinda useful. Grapefruits will appear in 2 early missions and have a high chance to spawn when you're saving Bill. And given that's when your inventory space is still at a premium, it's everything I said about the ice pops applying here. Is now a good time to mention that I prioritize the ability to heal and top off when you normally wouldn't, over the ability to save food items for later, cause that's why the grapefruit is above the ice pops, even if they still share a tier. Also, it's cute how a few of these spawn on top of the palm trees in the entrance plaza.
We also need zucchini? I love zucchini!
The zucchini is the first food item to earn what I would call a good tier, and it's not for its healing value of 1 block, but combining 2 zucchinis together, or a zucchini with corn or the various canned goods in the food court, will make Spitfire, something you otherwise cannot make in the food court thanks to the lack of chips. But beyond that, it's just another vegetable.
Yogurt!
Yogurt is useful for making quick step, but that's about all it's good for if I'm honest. It also spawns with the lovers when they appear, so it's good for healing when you get to them. Beyond that, you're only ever finding it in the supermarket, so don't expect to use it that often.
You monster, let me see those melons.
A melon or 2 will appear with the occasional side quests, most notably the gun shop trio, but it doesn't naturally spawn outside of the supermarket. It does, however, regularly appear with the cardboard boxes in all of North Plaza, where you spend basically the entire last third of the game. And since the survival book turns this 2-block healing item into a 4-block healing item, that means that you'll actually find yourself recovering quite a bit of health with this thing. I don't think you'll ever hold one of these in your inventory because it's not really good for anything, but if you need a quick heal and you're in North Plaza, which is very likely late game, you'll probably find yourself eating a few of these. The squash is the opposite end of the spectrum. The squash is just another one-block healing vegetable, but it can be found in the cardboard boxes in the warehouse and the rooftop. This means that whenever you're going to or from the safe house, you can just open these up and have a chance to get something. Now sure, there's 4 healing items you can get, and the squash is easily the least useful of them, but it has a pretty high spawn rate, and it does mean that the better items you can get from it, you can save for mixed drinks. So in a roundabout way, it being worse makes it useful, even if you're never going to actively fish for one of these.
Pizza time.
Our first cookable item, the pizza. It heals for 2 blocks, it can rot to a worthless 1 item that makes you sick, and it can be cooked to a 4-block heal. By itself, it's not terribly useful. The food court, which has most of the ovens, has no shortage of proper 4-block and even 5-block healing items that you don't need to cook and they won't spoil on you. What makes the pizza unique is that it can actually earn you PP. Sure, the raw meat can as well, but since the food court has 6 of the 9 ovens in the mall, and the pizza shop has 4 cardboard boxes that will always drop a frozen pizza, well, that means when you fight Carlito for the first time, you can cook those 4 pizzas, then defeat him, then get 4 new pizzas from the respawn cardboard boxes, cook 2 of those in the ovens, take the other 2 with you to Alfresca Plaza, and on the way back, grab another one and take it to Paradise. That's all 9 ovens used, which means you get a 10,000 prestige point bonus on top of the 2,000 each oven gives you. 28,000 prestige points before you've been introduced to the queens is nothing to sneeze at, and there's no denying that pizzas are the best way to do that. Then there's how the Hall family and the Infinity mode each drop a golden brown pizza, and how using all 3 health books will turn them into full heals, which is just more viable in the Infinity mode than it is on a new run in 72-hour mode. Overall, pizzas are an easy go-to item for the early game.
Rare, medium, medium well done.
So this is gonna sound weird, but despite well done steaks being the best healing items without the aid of a blender, they're not the best item early game. Raw beef is much harder to find than a pizza, and it spoils noticeably faster. The only way you can reliably get these is to go into the underground maintenance tunnels and open cardboard boxes, or journey over to the supermarket, which is filled with zombies outside of the one story mission. And given that no survivor has more than 5 blocks worth of health, it's really no better than the much easier to get wine at healing survivors. It's with overtime mode in the Infinity mode where the stake shines. With the special forces all over the mall, and the route to get the items Isabella needs not being nearly as strict as the survivor scoops, going to the market for some raw meat and then cooking them when it's convenient might actually be preferable to mixed drink spam, if for no other reason than people don't like wasting their mixed drink effects. It's also the most common food drop of psychopaths in the Infinity mode, and since you only need the survival book to turn it into a full 12-block heal, it's easy for steaks to become the go-to healing item in the late game.
Mama, may I have cookie?
Yeah, the cookies outrank the steak. I wouldn't have guessed it either. Cookies spawn in the park and in Alfresca Plaza, both naturally and through any cardboard boxes there. Not that you're going to be finding any cardboard boxes in the park. But given that the park has the convicts and Alfresca Plaza has the population density of China, having some easy one-block healing items in both of these locations will be appreciated. They're also pretty common in the Infinity mode, from the Hall family to survivors to them having some extra spawn locations. There's nothing special about cookies, but they're easily some of the more reliable healing items in 2 of the more dangerous areas of the mall.
I am the milkman. My milk is delicious.
Much like with the baguette, a single gallon of milk will always spawn in North Plaza and in one of the movie theaters. It's also capable of making quick step, as is yogurt and wine, but it's the Infinity mode that pushes milk this high. It spawns in the underground maintenance tunnels by the various trucks, as I show in the video I did, and in the meat processing area, making for some good healing in this particularly hellish section. It also gets extra spawn. Bleh. A few of the mini-bosses like Rich and Janet in the Infinity mode will drop milk as well. It's a good mixed drink fodder in the main game, but it's a literal lifesaver in the Infinity mode.
But hey, look at all the pie!
Pie is a unique case for a food item. It's a one-block healer, so it's never worth carrying. But it's very useful in its 2 spawn locations. A pie and an orange juice will make untouchable, which might be the best mixed drink in the game, and both spawn endlessly in Paradise Plaza. 2 orange juices also spawn in Alfresca Plaza with an infinite pie stand near the blender. You can, in Alfresca Plaza, heal off the pies indefinitely, and use the milk and OJ for some quick step or nectar, whichever you would prefer. And, naturally, being able to make infinite untouchables at Paradise Plaza is really busted. It may be weak as a healing item, but it is the single most powerful blender item in the whole game.
See? It's a cabbage.
Cabbage can appear in cardboard boxes in the warehouse. So everything about how useful the squash is at healing applies here. But cabbage mixed with OJ will create Energizer, one of the most powerful mixed drinks for dealing with psychopaths. And that's all there is to it. It's squash, but with a mixed drink purpose.
Number 20. Frog in a frozen vegetable bag.
Okay, so imagine if the cabbage healed for 2 blocks of health without the aid of survival, spawned more frequently from the cardboard boxes than the cabbage or the squash does, and if it made quick step. That's the frozen vegetables. While the pies are the single most powerful blending item, the vegetables have better last-minute healing, especially with the books, and they make an almost equally good mixed drink in the form of quick step. It's a versatile and often readily available healing item.
I hate to be the one to say it, but I think we need some more orange juice to top this off.
This is both expected and a minor upset. Orange juice makes it to the top 5, but falls just short of S tier. With it healing 4 blocks of health and spawning indefinitely at the coffee shop in Paradise Plaza, it's both great for topping off your health before you head out into the mall, especially if the cardboard boxes were not nice to you, and it serves as a great baseline for basically every good mixed drink in the game. And if you don't want to use mixed drinks, or if you're still learning how to make them, you can just fill your inventory with them before you head out. Many would say this alone should put it to S tier. However, outside of that one location, only some of the cardboard boxes in Paradise Plaza and Wonderland Plaza have a chance of dropping it, and it's a noticeably smaller chance than the apples or the weapons have. So it's mostly just that one location you're going to be getting OJ. It heals a lot, it's next to the game's most convenient blender, and it's the base combination for the 5 good mixed drinks. But if you're in need of actual health in the mall, the only OJ you'll be using to heal is whatever you brought with you.
Hello!
When you think of 1-block healing items, you think of these bag of chips, and for good reason. They have a 1 in 4 chance of appearing out of any given trash can, making them the most reliable improvised healing item. They're actually the main reason to use all 3 health books in 72-hour mode, in that you can use any of the chips from trash cans as well as the countless that are always going to spawn, especially in the entrance plaza with its various stores, to instantly recover 3 blocks of health just about anywhere. This means that you only need to stock up on health when you know you're going up against a boss fight. You can otherwise just heal off of all the chips you keep scavenging. 2 bags of chips in a blender will also make Spitfire, which is basically an improvised weapon that heals you.
1 apple a day keeps the doctor away.
You know what I haven't brought up yet? Healing survivors. Something about survivor health. All of the male survivors, and Isabella when you have to escort her, have 5 blocks of health, while the female survivors have 3.5. And since when you heal a survivor, they drop their weapon, 1-block healing items are not ideal, as it will only take a few zombies sneaking up on them to combo them, and when they're getting hit, you cannot heal them or give them a weapon till the animation's done. And those food books do not apply to the health survivors get from food items. This gives the apple a bit of a unique niche to fall into, on top of the obvious benefits of it being a 2-block healing item that you can reliably get from cardboard boxes. On that note, it is the most common food item in Wonderland Plaza, as 2 will always spawn, and the cardboard boxes have a really high drop rate for them. Wonderland Plaza also has the most scoops and survivors in it. From Adam the Clown, Joe Slade, and Paul, along with their associated hostages, there's the Hanging Duo, the Lovers, the Taurus, who spawn a bunch of apples themselves, Susan, and Leroy. And most players will end up dragging Bailey, Gil, and the Gunshop Trio through this place as well. That adds up to 18 of the 48 savable survivors going through Wonderland Plaza. So if you or your survivors during any of these missions need healing, apples are probably going to be what you do it with.
We're on a secret mission. We've got us a secret plan.
The wine has a chance to spawn in the cardboard boxes of North Plaza, giving you a free 5 blocks of health right then and there. That goes up to 10 with the survival book. And when you consider that 10 wines spawn in the food court, and the 5 blocks they give means that it's a full heal to any survivor who will accept food items. And during a fresh playthrough, you'll spend most of the early game having 6 blocks of health, so the wine is basically a full heal by itself. add the survival book onto that, and it's all but a full heal regardless of Frank's health value. Honestly, from day 2 onward, wine is the only reason to go back to the food court. Oh yeah, it also makes quick step.
Can I have some chocolate milk?
Coffee Creamer is a 4-block healing item that spawns in the security room for the entirety of day 1, and it has a high spawn rate in the cardboard boxes in North Plaza, aka the entirety of Act 3. It can be combined with orange juice or milk to make quick step, which are available at most of the blenders. And it's really as simple as that, actually. The Coffee Creamer, which is actually chocolate milk if you read the label, it may not be as ubiquitous as apples or the snacks, nor is it as powerful of a healing item as wine, but it's just pretty good at everything. It heals a lot, it's not hard to find, and it makes one of the more useful mixed drinks. It's not the best in any one category, but it's the only food item that's really good at all of them. There we have it. I actually ranked the 25 base healing items of the Willamette Parkview Mall, and without going by healing value alone. Honestly, this was a more casual tier list, don't take it too seriously. But as for the actual healing as a mechanic, it's busted. More so than in 2 and 3, honestly. It's mostly because the cardboard boxes will frequently drop those 4-block healing items in North Plaza, which you spend a lot of time in. And while the orange juice doesn't have a high spawn rate, it does still come out of them. And that's on top of the fact that the game puts a lot of 4-block healing items within walking distance of the main route of the story and survivor missions. Replacing the gallons of coffee creamer and OJ and the bottles of wine in the cardboard boxes with the other fruits and vegetables that are otherwise only in the supermarket would solve this problem for the most part. It would also make using the 3 books more viable outside of just the potato chips if you could more reliably get those smaller healing items. The big thing I learned when looking at this is that the food is largely meant to add some flavor to the world at large. They place the food items based on what would logically make sense for that part of the mall, and the healing values are based on the food item itself. How the health value relates to its location is irrelevant. It wasn't in the name of balance that made the food court have 10 5-block healing items, it's because the high-end dining of Chris's Fine Foods and the wine caskets make it logical to put wine there. The pizzas and the raw meat need to be cooked before they spoil, not because the food items themselves are absurdly powerful. It's because it just adds a nice attention to detail. The same goes for the frozen vegetables and the ice pops, defrosting and melting. They're certainly not good healing items, but it's a nice attention to detail. And it's not certainly in the name of balance that you need to knock the apples out of the trees in Leisure Park to use them. And while I appreciate these details, I can't blame Capcom Vancouver for downplaying and outright dropping them. Gives the first Dead Rising a bit more texture to appreciate, though. To celebrate hitting 1,000 subscribers, I put up a community poll for what the next tier list should be, with 3 options. In a distant third was the mixed drink tier list across the franchise. In a not-so-distant second was the Dead Rising 1 weapons tier list, which lost out to the Survivor tier list that you just clicked on. While I'm not the first one to rank the survivors of Willamette, every tier list I found was solely on how annoying they found them, and how useful they were for achievements. I agree that overall gameplay is king, but it's not the only factor. These are stories, events, side quests, and, of course, characters. So, naturally, my tier list will have a few extra stipulations. While I'm not taking all of the speedrun strats into account, I will be looking at this as a perfect playthrough, saving every survivor and getting the true ending, while starting from level 1, and from someone who has taken the time to learn how the survivor types work. This is because, once you know how the survivor AI works, survivors are universally tolerable, and when you don't know how the AI works, they're universally frustrating. I'll be arming every survivor when possible, and adjusting my movement speed to work with them when possible. Consider this me giving them their best possible chance for the tier list. Survivors will be tiered in their scoops. Only 2 survivors are of a drastically different caliber from their scoop group, and both are in their respective groups for a reason. And if you're saving survivors, you're ideally trying to save all of them. Aaron may be much worse than Bert, but they're a package deal. Smaller details include the survivor's route, time of day, and if they can be reasonably escorted with other survivors. The survivors' interactions, personalities, and stories will also be considered. They're all part of the experience, after all. I will not be using the exploit that lets you give weapons to survivors who aren't meant to be able to use them. Although exploits to make their movement or pathfinding better are fair game. Photo opportunities that require the survivor dying are not factored in. Finally, only scoop survivors count. Story characters and victims will be ignored. Okay, enough pre-planning. Let's head out and get the job done. Man, I wish this game had a skip dialogue button. Gordon has some interesting traits in his mission. First, it's implied that he's the coward Todd and Brian are talking about in the entrance plaza. And when you talk to him, his conversation loops because he's too scared to actually talk to you. The only way to help him is to hit him and make him more afraid of you than what's out there. And making him bald was a great design choice, showing just how easily stressed out he was before all of this. So, even the worst Dead Rising survivor has more interesting traits to him than most open-world NPCs get. That said, he is the worst survivor, and no amount of cleverness can overcome that. His running speed can keep up with Frank, but there's no easy way to get him back to the security room. He's about as far from Cliff's mission as one can get as well. So, do you try to escort him through Alfresca Plaza and pray he doesn't get grabbed mid-trip in the most densely populated part of the mall? Or do you try to bring him through the park into Cliff, praying that neither the convicts nor the combat veteran rip him apart on sight? Or do you take him through Wonderland Plaza and take the longest possible time and still have to backtrack for Cliff's hostages? What hurts the most is that he's a cowardly survivor. These survivors only attack if you press the Y button when they're next to you, meaning they're a struggle to defend themselves. Except for Gordon. He outright refuses to, even at the best of times. Oh, and that run speed can actually work against you. If level ups have not been kind to you, Frank can end up slower than Gordon is, resulting in a constantly stopping and starting Gordon, making it even easier for him to get grabbed and zombo-comboed. Worst of all, is that he doesn't give any more prestige points than the easier to get survivors at that point in the game, and it's literally just better to take candid pictures of Jesse. Thanks to how rare erotica photos are, they give really good prestige points, and Jesse has a chance for a surefire 1000 PP pick every time, especially if you have the camera books. You can take 30 pictures of her, go outside to refill the camera, and then take 30 more and end up with more PP than if you took that time to save Gordon before Case 3 activates. That's what puts him in E tier. He's the only survivor who's arguably better for leveling up by ignoring in favor of taking pictures. Or at least waiting until the last possible minute to save. Ronald is the opposite of Gordon. His interaction is pretty standard. He's a fat guy who wants some food because he's fat. The first game really wanted commentary on American obesity, so it's natural that a survivor like him would exist. And while Gordon is the worst survivor mechanically, Ronald is one of the best. He's every bit as competent with firearms as Bill or Kendall is, and he has a 10k PP photo opportunity. So what's he doing near the bottom? Well, his combat stats aren't very helpful. The distance to the security room is pretty short, and while none of the possible survivors whom Frank is likely to be with are particularly capable fighters, none of them are in need of direct assistance either. Since Frank won't have his hands full and you'll have some level ups by now, there's just less of a need for some covering fire. And then there's his personality. I hate him. He is the most unlikable survivor in the game. Every bit of his dialogue is just talking about food, and he is easily the most selfish and ungrateful survivor in the game, despite being the only survivor who actively needs something to be recruited. He doesn't get any better after you save him. He only comes to the security room to eat all the food reserves and ends up causing a shortage, demanding more. So you need to bring back some food after defeating the Hall family, or he'll take most of the survivors you save on day 1 to go scavenge for more food, dooming them to die. And he's the only survivor who negatively impacts the map, as Jill's sandwiches will no longer have food after his mission activates, even if you never interact with him. The park will certainly still have the convicts roaming about, and the movie theater will be swarmed with cultists. So there's already very little reason to go to the further half of Paradise Plaza. Now that there's no food on that half either, most players will never use anything past the Wonderland shortcut unless a mission demands so. Thanks, Ronald. And thanks to how mutinies work, you need to have food before entering the security room for his mutiny, as leaving will instantly cause the mission to expire and have 10 plus survivors leave. If Ronald was not such a capable survivor mechanically speaking, he'd be the only F tier, as he's the one survivor who can actively make the player experience worse, both by saving him and simply by existing. Completing the bottom Triforce of survivors, Jennifer is the most boring survivor in the game, characterization-wise. She's simply a reward for defeating the Raincoat Cult upon their introduction without getting killed or knocked out. She gives the player a natural reason to deal with them, and she's not very far from the security room. And unlike Ronald or Gordon, she's at least both cooperative and grateful. But female survivors are at a disadvantage in the first Dead Rising. First is health, as every gal aside from Isabella only has 3.5 blocks of health, and Jennifer is a passive survivor. This subtype is exclusive to some of the female survivors, and it refers to characters who, while not strictly crippled, cannot be armed with a weapon and instead are escortable by hand. This isn't as big of a deal as you might think, since their push attack is actually more useful than the common survivor punch, and it immediately floors whatever zombie they hit. This can even cause a domino effect against small clusters, so keeping them away from cultists and really large hordes is the only real concern. But Jennifer doesn't get that luxury. Sure, no other cultists will spawn in the area until you reload it, but the other half of Paradise is swarming, and if you didn't pick up Gordon, Ronald, and Cliff's hostages in a single trip, you'll have to either carry her by hand through the horde, or manually kill as many as possible to minimize her damage. It's still very doable, but it makes her one of the more annoying survivors to bring back despite how close she is, and she's not a particularly interesting character to make up for it. These two spawn alongside the Sniper family, and this is actually one half mission, one half unmarked mission. You see, much like Taurus or Barricade Pair, this is actually 2 missions, but Otis only calls you about the one relating to Jolie. Rachel's version of the mission is actually unmarked. Think of how the Barricade Pair or Taurus get 2 separate missions, one for each survivor. I do appreciate that it's just a case of 2 friends who disagreed on where to hide, and both are terrified and regretting their choice. They're our first example of tether survivors, meaning one survivor will only follow the other, Rachel being tethered to Jolie in this case. This means that Rachel will always be lagging behind a bit, so zombies attracted to Jolie but failing to reach her can easily change targets to Rachel. But if Jolie gets grabbed, Rachel will stop beside her, and while she's not as cowardly as Gordon, she still hesitates to attack, so she won't save Jolie and often gets grabbed and or zombo comboed herself. And both are passive survivors, so you're not arming them. This gets really bad with Jolie, since she's technically a normal survivor personality-wise, and will try to attack the Raincoat Cult without a weapon, which spells her death if you don't stop her. You'll often be escorting Floyd, who benefits from being carried, and Wayne's fast movement speed means he'll be next to you instead of them. Most people don't find them too frustrating since they're so close to the security room, and their photo op gives some really good PP, but they're always a holdup when bringing the Hall family refugees to safety. The first hostages on the tier list, which just means you need to defeat a psychopath to save them. Well, technically Jennifer was a hostage as well, but it was more appropriate to bring it up here. All 3 have different dialogue available, and Frank has a different means of convincing the group based on which one he talks to. Josh specifically ends up feeling bad for Cliff upon the group's arrival to the security room, believing that he was probably a nice guy before all this happened. But while all 3 can be armed with weapons, even shotguns, a rarity for female survivors, they're all cowardly. Not as bad as Gordon. In fact, as far as cowards go, they're perfectly functional. But you'll still need to tap the Y button every time you want them to attack, and there's no guarantee that they will. As such, it's often just better to use the guns yourself, give them a melee weapon, and try to keep them out of the way. They're not particularly helpful, but at least they follow Frank somewhat reliably, if not slowly. Leia might be the saddest survivor in the game. Listening to her describe losing her baby to the zombies is heart-wrenching. Or rather, reading it is. Because what you're listening to is... Now, to be fair, this is the fault of the game's lack of unique voice lines. But at the same time, the lack of voice acting during gameplay is a non-issue the rest of the time. Having her reuse the zombie grapple animation to make it look like she's frantically asking Frank about Grace doesn't look right. And then there's rescuing her. Leia is the first example of an impaired survivor on the list, and frankly, in the game. Not only can they not equip weapons, but often can barely move. And in Leia's case, she's not alone en route to the security room. If it was just Bill and Bert going with you, it'd be fine. But Aaron is more of a detriment to her survival than his own, since him getting zombo-comboed means you'll have to put her down and go save him. Leia also has one of the slowest movement speeds in the game, but she also never gets tired, so she'll at least slowly pull herself to any position. Without exaggeration, Leia would at least be the top of C tier if Dead Rising had the option to skip dialogue. Something that holds both Leia and Floyd back in this tier list is how their interactions are nothing but talking. Floyd's conversation, while not as tragic, is still sad and more involved. Floyd is talking about how he doesn't even value surviving since he's so old already, instead wanting to die on his terms. And Frank correctly points out that he would probably regret dying in a crappy pawn shop instead of living to see a museum again. It's strong stuff. Unlike Leia, Frank and Floyd are having an actual back-and-forth conversation. And it's good that the dialogue is engaging, because that's all there is. He doesn't have any of the annoying voice lines that Leia spams, but he doesn't really have much in the way of voice lines, period. He's not animated in the slightest until the very end of the conversation, and it's one of the longest conversations in the game to boot. Floyd would also really benefit from a skip dialogue button for repeat playthroughs. As for his escort, he's interesting. He has respectable running speed for what is technically a crippled survivor, but he'll have to slow down periodically to catch his breath. This can be mitigated by picking him up and putting him down immediately to reset the cycle, and if you make sure to never go further than what his max move distance will be, he'll actually never end up getting tired. Manual escorting is still faster though, and both Jolie and Rachel suffer from his piggyback ride. Floyd is also a survivor who has a request, in his case for some wine, which cements him as a step above Leia. Much like his proper scoop, the dialogue is the draw. He wants some wine to help calm the nerves of the survivors, well aware it's not going to fix the long-term problems, but it might help lighten things up. The reward is a basic 10,000 prestige points, which isn't a big deal by that point in the game. The mission is useful for another reason, but we'll get to that later in the tier list. These two are found right next to Joe Slade's mission, making them hard to miss despite being unmarked survivors. Their initial situation is attention-grabbing, as they're hanging on for dear life above massive hordes of zombies. Not only do you have to clear out the hordes below them, but you then need to damage them to knock them loose. Nick is the only survivor who actively begs for Frank's guidance, and Sally merely confirms that she's fine. This gives the two of them some contrast. This creates a bit of contrast between the two, as Nick is an easily panicked man who can still be armed with weapons, while Sally cannot be given weapons, but remains calm and rational. Despite this and their matching outfits, they aren't tethered survivors and don't even acknowledge each other. The player will be escorting Joe's survivors at the same time in most playthroughs. Nick's combat abilities are no better than Kay's beyond being able to use a shotgun. While Sally's inability to use weapons doesn't matter, since the other hostages also can't use weapons, and Sally is much quicker to respond and follow Frank than they are. So Nick's not terribly helpful, but Sally doesn't hold the player up. Overall, very average survivors after the mission itself is cleared. Speaking of average, everything of note about Tad doesn't directly relate to him as a character. If you don't show up immediately for Kent's request, Tad is already dead. His dialogue implies that he met Kent for the first time when he tied him up, and his rescue dialogue is him hoping Frank doesn't snap like Kent did. He's a perfectly capable survivor, but he's so close to the warehouse, and the zombie count is going to be non-existent after the mission is cleared, so there's no need to even arm him outside of personal amusement. He's the reward for seeing Kent through to the end, but there's nothing actually frustrating with him mechanically nor personality-wise. There is a behind-the-scenes detail with him, though. Dead Rising has a limit of 8 active survivors. This limit operates on a first-come, first-served basis, and if there aren't enough slots for a mission to take place, the mission is put on hold until space is made, assuming the paused mission doesn't expire. Characters like the Intro Plaza survivors, Brad, Isabella, and Psychopaths don't count towards this limit. Interestingly, neither does Tad. Since Kent's side quests activate as soon as the last one is successfully cleared, and because they're treated as optional case files for whatever reason, Tad's spawning counts as an event, so he can be a 9th survivor. He will be factored into the limit once he does spawn, though. To my knowledge, there is no practical application of this knowledge. Similar to Tad, these two are very close to the security room, so Pamela's inability to use weapons and Heather's reluctance to fight are trivial details, instead of deciding factors. Pamela is surrounded by a lot of zombies, so have a queen on standby if you're not confident in your melee attacks. Heather is not particularly proud of herself for leaving her twin behind, but the dialogue is pretty cut and dry with her, whereas Pamela is grateful to Frank both when recruited and brought back to safety. On that note, Heather and Pamela's lines feel very disconnected, and the game doesn't have any actual proper conversations between them like the other Tether survivors in the game do, probably because they can be saved independently of each other. On that note, Pamela is the only Tether survivor who can be saved independently of her alpha, since she only becomes tethered to Heather when they reunite. You could choose to save Pamela and go back to the security room, then go back for Heather, and keep her with you until Kent and Ronald's missions activate. This is helpful if you're still escorting Tanya and Ross when they spawn, and you need to get the medicine back ASAP. Alternatively, Pamela instantly joins when Heather is brought back to her. Starting on day 2, the optional side quests become much stricter with their time limit, and it becomes much easier to fall behind. So it's nice that these two have a bit of adaptability during their start of this hectic cycle. It's what gets them this high to begin with. These 4 have the misfortune of being held up by the only psychopath who actively attacks the hostages during the fight, and it makes them some of the only survivors with a high chance of dying before being recruited. Then there's the timer. If the player takes too long to even start this side quest, 1 or more of the hostages will already be dead at the start of the fight. Thankfully, the mission gives the player plenty of time before this can happen. As long as the timer is still blue, you're still good. It's also nice how all 4 ladies have different reactions to being saved. Lily is just exhausted by the whole ordeal, Kelly is in disbelief, Janet is a bit traumatized, and Kay is outright pissed. Kay is also the only one of the 4 who can be armed with a weapon, and she's mildly competent with a handgun or SMG. Honestly, getting the 4 of them down the staircase is the hardest part of their rescue. After that, it's just making sure that you kill any cultists in Paradise Plaza before escorting them to the warehouse. After that, you're pretty much home free. Leroy is the classic trope of the vaguely injured survivor. Might be infected, might just be a scratch. Might be starting the turn, might just be tired and stressed out. His banter is all about the juxtaposition of Frank's demanding tone and Leroy trying to ensure the injury, which Frank doesn't know about, is surely just a scratch. The weird thing is, zombies seem especially attracted to this area when talking to Leroy. I've been playing this game for over a decade personally, and every time at least 5 to 6 zombies make a sprint to Frank and Leroy when the conversation starts, no matter the route I take. Is that deliberate? Leroy is the one survivor I'm a bit let down in. He's just a normal male survivor mechanically speaking. Whether or not his combat abilities will help depends on if the Gunshop Trio tagged along with you to Wonderland Plaza or not. But his injury and nervousness don't carry into gameplay at all. I can understand not doing what Chop to You Drop did, where Leroy's health would slowly deplete over the trip back to the security room, but you'd also think a mutiny of some kind would occur over his injury. I know, weird thing to ask for. But it'd complement Simone's request for a gun in case she turns. He's too unique and, plausibly, useful to be any lower than B tier, but he's the one survivor I think more could have and should have been done with. David is a rare case of foreshadowing for a Dead Rising survivor, as he was shot by someone that we would soon come to know very well in the supermarket. Frank refusing to say he's one of the good guys is one of his more dickish moments, but he also offers to help David completely unprompted, so you get both sides of Frank's personality here. He's also wearing a wedding ring, although David's wife is never brought up, so I'm assuming she passed away well before any of this took place. Personality-wise, David is one of the more straightforward, if not nicer survivors you encounter. His real benefit is with Cletus, who has the single longest lasting mission in the game, lasting for almost all of days 1 and 2, but there aren't many convenient opportunities to head down to the gun store to deal with him, especially once day 2 rolls around. David's scoop occurs during the downtime between Adam's fight and Carlito's rematch, giving the player a good excuse to visit North Plaza and deal with the gun shop owner. And, thanks to the Wonderland Plaza shortcut, it won't take long to get him back. Wayne is a fast and combat-capable survivor, but he's practically right next to the warehouse, and you're escorting some of the slower survivors at the same time, so you won't be able to take advantage of either of those traits. His combat skills are better for keeping Jolie and Rachel safe while you go talk to Floyd than they are at actually escorting them. What puts Wayne up to B tier is similar to David, in that he ties into a psychopath, in this case, the very battle he's involved in. At first, it's just irony. Wayne is too scared to run against the snipers, despite the fact that he's the one survivor fast enough to avoid their gunfire. But there's an implication many people miss. In the cutscene, Roger and Jack are not particularly impressed with Thomas, and are dismissive of his ability to hit an unaware civilian. So, imagine a large man like Wayne, ideally an easy target. Thomas whiffs the shot against him, and Wayne takes off like a rocket up to the 2nd floor, and manages to get behind cover before anyone else can take another shot at him. When you take that into account, Wayne quite literally completes the story of the whole family. Simone is another survivor who is mostly dialogue, and is right next to the warehouse. If you're not going for transmissionary, you can even just grab her right after beating Kent, since her mission activates at the same time. She's capable of using lighter weapons, but even if you head out of Paradise Plaza for whatever reason, she's the single closest survivor to the warehouse outside of the twins. And you'll also have Tad with you. It's her scenario that sets her apart. You have to get far enough into the game for Barnaby to die to save her. Simone has been bitten and believes herself to be doomed. Frank will have to have heard that Isabel is a medical technician, which only happens after zombie Barnaby attacks Jesse. Otherwise, Frank's comment of "you don't have to turn into one of them" becomes baseless optimism that fails to sway her. The failed scenario is also how you learn about her backstory. The rest of her family and her boyfriend had already turned. Oh, as an aside, in the promotional blog for Dead Rising 2, a character mentions it's possible to get bit and not turn if the bite's not deep, and you're lucky. This is just meant to be a hand-wave explanation for why Chuck never turns in Dead Rising 2, but it retroactively gives Leroy and Simone a plausible means of surviving Willamette in the long term. These two serve a mechanical purpose for newer players, teaching them about books if the player hasn't interacted with them yet. Due to limited voice lines, they never audibly speak Japanese, but their banter is quite amusing on whether Frank can be trusted or if he's even mentally stable. Ironic, given a psychopath stalks the area they're hiding in. I love Shinji just blatantly saying Frank's Japanese sucks so he won't understand a word of what they're saying immediately afterwards. Mechanically, beyond their sudden grasp of the English language, they're tether survivors with Shinji following Yu. Both are pretty combat capable, although Yu is definitely the more aggressive of the two. They correspond really well with Greg, as you can save them right after you defeat Adam but before you stop the ride, allowing you to navigate a clean upper level of the Wonderland Plaza, and a chance to grab the criminal biology book for the small chainsaw before you have to use it. They also have a photo opportunity worth some good PP early in the game. Similar to Leroy, I'm surprised there's no request for them in the security room, especially given how early you bring them back. Given the Japanese book never gets used again, a side quest of you asking for the book so he can try to talk to the other survivors would be pretty nice. Gil's side quest activates at the same time of Floyd's request for some wine, but Gil is very much tied to that 8 survivor limit. Thanks to the Raincoat Cult and the Gun Shop Trio, 8 survivors can easily be in the mall before Gil's mission begins. If you don't know how to manipulate the spawn to ensure Gil, you'll have to escort him with the Wonderland Plaza squad, which itself is quite frustrating thanks to Gil needing some help to move. Thankfully, I know the trick, so it's a non-factor. I'll explain how to do it later in the tier list. As for Gil himself, his mission seems like it should be where Leia and Floyd are, if not lower given what I just mentioned, as it's another dialogue-only mission. But Gil has a lot of unique aspects to him. Almost all of his animations are rarely used with other survivors while offering a very rare photo opportunity. His repeating voice lines are, instead of high-pitched crying, a low and jovial drunken laugh. This carries into his dialogue, offering Frank a drink and then justifying his own drunken stupor as Frank tries to get him to come back with him to safety. Similar to Gordon, Gil can't just be talked to, but hitting him won't sober him up. It's only when Frank threatens to abandon Gil that the reporter's words start to sink in. Once he realizes Frank isn't BSing, Gil agrees to follow him. The Raincoat Cult will likely still be active if you do this as soon as possible, but this actually ends up being a good thing. The cult being in Alfresca Plaza will result in a less dense zombie population. This makes Gil the only survivor you would actively want to take through Alfresca, allowing Frank to get back to the security room in time for Case 6, even faster than the Wonderland shortcut allows for. Unlike Floyd or Leia, I actually don't mind having to sit through the dialogue each time. Gil's just that entertaining. I always took it that Jeff and Natalie were by both exits to the rooftop because they thought the other was just behind them and wanted to stay there in case that's how they got up there. Regardless, these two serve as the introduction to many core mechanics. Obviously, they're the first survivors, and teach the player how to escort them. But they also teach that survivors can use weapons, be given weapons, need to be talked to be saved, that survivors are characters whose motivation affect their performance, and it displays the tether system, with Natalie always following Jeff. I guess Natalie is technically the other survivor who can be saved independently of her alpha, but there's no reason to do this. They also show new players that the rooftop has 2 doors to the warehouse, and gives them a chance to learn about the soccer balls that spawn on the roof. They also give the first photo opportunity. Now, you can bring them with you into the mall, but why would you? The zombie count is minuscule, and the PP you gain for their rescue is far more valuable than any covering fire Jeff can provide. In fact, their level ups are the most important in the game. Jeff and Natalie with their photo op and rescue can get Frank to level 3. The ideal perks to get are health blocks, inventory space, the jump kick, and or a speed upgrade. But which, if any of these perks you get early game, will determine what you can take with you from Paradise Plaza to the rest of the mall, as well as how you go about dealing with zombies for the first hour or so. While as far as characters go, they're the typical older devoted couple, they have some of the most pronounced effects on the early game. Their lack of direct involvement with the gameplay is what keeps them just out of A tier. Susan gets to A tier for one reason alone. She's the funniest survivor in the game. From pleading with the zombies that they wouldn't want to eat someone who's half plastic and bolts, to Frank taking offense to being called a boy, Susan's laid-back attitude is just a welcome change of pace from a late-game survivor. You'll have to manually escort her since, like Floyd, she'll get tired as she runs, and she's noticeably slow to boot. But from plenty of combat-capable survivors to Mindy also desiring, although not strictly needing, direct guidance, this is hardly an issue. And that's it. Susan is a survivor who's not a hassle to deal with and has the funniest interaction in the game. Helps to have a queen. Oh boy, these two. Possibly the most infamous survivors in the game, thanks to the beginner trap they set. Don't give him the gun. I find it weird that the first aid kit from 2-3 doesn't get referenced at all in the dialogue. I also find it weird that this is the only group of Tether survivors where Frank actively talks to both of them beyond single-sentence requests. But it also makes Tanya and Ross's dialogue among the most emotional and convincing in the game. It's also meant to be another case of foreshadowing, as it's meant to imply that Joe Slade tried to kidnap Tanya and shot Ross. But the two managed to escape and hide on the other side of the plaza. Combined with Janet's comment from the boss fight, it gives an idea of just how far-reaching Joe's sadism was. Ross can't move on his own at all, but Tanya is a very capable fighter and gunslinger, so as long as you don't book it, she can effectively escort herself and Ross. In fact, here's a little secret about escorting survivors. Slower is faster. If you have to carry a survivor manually, or if you have several of them armed with guns, take your time and let them shoot down the zombies. It'll minimize the grapples against them, and often you, and thin the horde down. And it makes carrying survivors like Ross much easier. It's also what makes them higher than most. Unlike Leia or Floyd, Ross is injured with a survivor who operates as a guardian built into the scoop. Mindy and Debbie can be saved as soon as Paul goes on the offensive. He does not need to be beaten, saved, or killed to recruit them. Paul prioritizes Frank over other survivors to boot, so you could safely escort them right away if time is getting dire. Also, none of the three have the personality you'd quite expect. Debbie is mostly defined by being impressed with Frank's skills, Mindy is very calm and collective given what happened, and Paul just wants Frank to not report on what he did. This is likely because Mindy and Debbie can be saved independently of Paul, but even in the safe house, they never start arguing if all three are brought back. Mindy and Debbie just casually talk with each other, and Paul keeps to himself in the corner. Paul is also the single most profitable survivor in terms of PP. 30,000 PP for his defeat, 2 10k photo ops, 30,000 PP for his recruit, 60,000 PP for his survival, and another 10k for his request. Said request also gives the player access to Molotovs, but they're not very helpful for how late in the game they're given to you. And once Otis evacuates your survivors, Paul won't be there to give you anymore. It's the PP that's Paul's biggest asset. Those unique traits definitely carry them, but they're also pretty good survivors in their own right. Debbie and Paul can both use shotguns, and Mindy is the single most hassle-free unarmed survivor in the game, since she follows Frank's orders with ease. They're standout survivors who offer no real issues getting them back to safety, beyond your own ability to get them back in time. The ideal side quest for a Dead Rising game. While Paul is the single most profitable survivor, Sean's hostages offer the most PP of any survivor group, offering 375,000 for recruiting and saving all 5 hostages. That number going just over 400,000 if Sean's defeat is counted. Yeah, having 5 people tied up in one place behind a boss battle will do that. Their personalities aren't as immediately striking as Joe's crew, with most either being grateful to Frank or angry at the cult, understandably. The rescue dialogue implies they were already in the movie theater when the outbreak happened, and they were still holed up in there when the cult took the theater over. The 4 main survivors can all be armed with weapons, and Beth can even be armed with a shotgun. 3 shotguns and an SMG make the trek back to the security room much more bearable, although not quite trivial given how overflowed with zombies Paradise becomes after the cult falls. It also makes it easier to escort Cheryl, the only timid survivor of the group. She's also the biggest focus of them, being held separately from the other hostages, and having a special request for Frank to photograph her. Given these are high-value erotica pictures, the rarest photo category, it makes a side quest worthy of anywhere from 30 to 40,000 PP, if all 3 photo books are held. I considered putting Cheryl into S tier, away from the other 4 as an exception to the rule, since her request is easily the most profitable in the game. However, given the Special Forces are much better at grinding PP in the endgame of a run, and how helpful the other 4 are at keeping her safe if armed with guns from the gun store, I'm content labeling all 5 as a good batch for their PP value alone. These survivors open fire once Frank approaches them, and escaping can be a problem if you habitually close the door on yourself. It's the ventilation picture, something that's easy to forget even for veteran players, that keeps them at the bottom of S tier. Fun fact about that picture, the game doesn't check your camera since it can't save the subject matter of any given photo, and instead checks the list of available photo opportunities. Those aren't just for survivors, but the environment as well. The PP stickers are just there to visualize them. If the photo opportunity for the ventilation shaft is no longer available, then the game knows the player found it. That's why you need to retake the vent photo for each playthrough, but Ken's erotica picture can be from any playthrough. Only photo ops reset. As for the survivors themselves, they have an interesting trichotomy. Brett serves as the quiet leader of the trio and is armed with a machine gun. It's not clear if it's his or if he simply managed to loot a dead Special Forces member, but he definitely has the most militant personality of the 3. Jonathan serves as the face of them, and he's the one who actually talks with Frank throughout the mission. Eliza is the most revealing, though. She's the only survivor in the whole game who made an effort to get to the security room after it was welded shut. Her bubbly demeanor, completely different sense of dress, and Jonathan's outburst at her implies that these 3 didn't know each other before all this went down, or at least that Eliza met up with them after the fact. As for the gameplay, they have the combat capabilities of the cult hostages and the adaptability of the twins. While you can be bold and take them with you to the cult hideout, it's generally preferable to either take them back to the security room on their own, or bring them with you to Wonderland Plaza. Luckily, they're natural gunslingers, and the only survivors who could realistically handle a full trip through North Plaza. Eliza is more prone to having to pause to cry than Jonathan or Brett are, but the stop-and-start nature of escorting them so that way they can shoot down the hordes of zombies mean anyone lagging behind will have time to catch up. Eliza herself is perhaps the most competent survivor with handheld firearms as well. And all 3 of them just make for natural bodyguards when it comes time to bring everyone from Wonderland Plaza back to the security room. Bill, having been trapped in the closet for 2 days straight, is none the wiser about the zombie outbreak. This, along with him being so good with firearms and being the first real survivor you have to escort to the security room, secures him the S tier. So, instead, allow me to explain something. Survivors have different aggro radiuses and conditions. There's the range where they will attack zombies of their own volition, then there's the range where they'll attack on Frank's command, and finally there's a follow-up range where they're willing to keep attacking after they initiated an attack. Every survivor has at least one of these 3, although which ones and how many can vary. Female survivors who can't be armed have a single priority cube, but some, like Sophie and Jolie, have longer attack ranges for when Frank calls to action. Cowardly survivors can also have more than one. Aaron, Natalie, and Nick all only have on-command aggro ranges, but Nick's aggro range is still pretty good, and he has follow-up capabilities, so he's still considered combat capable. So when I say that a survivor is combat capable, it means that they can be armed with firearms and can be effective with them. And when I say Bill is one of the most combat effective survivors in the game, know that means that the first survivor you find in the mall proper can cover a very long range. And with Aaron, Leia, and Sophie all in need of some help, every armed set of arms helps. Sophie is the only survivor in the series who isn't directly a hostage of the corresponding boss fight, even when compared to Paul or the cult. As such, it's very possible to just save her and ignore the convicts until later. Should you be too ill-equipped to deal with them at the moment, or if you just want to save the heavy machine gun for Adam the Clown. On her own, you can lead her by hand directly, but she's a fairly loyal survivor and pretty good at following orders. Her personality is, understandably, almost nothing but distraught over the death of Sid at the hands of the convicts. Her best trait was unintentional, however. You can take pictures of her sitting down, and for some reason, they count as upskirt shots. A little overly generous, but they're worth some serious prestige points. Given that a single PP sticker is worth 1,000, being able to use the initial photography book and earn 900 PP a photo from her is far more valuable than photographing the environment itself. And remember, you can just go back to Paradise Plaza to instantly recharge your camera. So you can take 30 pictures, go recharge, and take 30 more. This can double or even triple the PP value Sophie offers, enough to compete with late-game survivors. And best of all, the game hands the player the perfect opportunity to do this. Once you've optimized your routes, you're left with a bit of a dead period before Case 2 starts. You got everyone from the mall at this point, Adam's defeated, and you beat Cletus when you went to save David. You have a good 5 to 10 real-time minutes of nothing better to do. May as well get a free level up or two before you have to do 2 back-to-back psychopaths. Without this, Sophie would have likely made it to high B, or maybe even have gotten into the A tier because of how cooperative she is. But giving the player a free 50,000 prestige points while helping kill time, I can't think of anyone else who does that. This is actually a pretty controversial choice, as there's a lot of debate on how useful Kendall actually is to the player. Kendall is meant to help you escort Isabella back to safety, but since carrying a survivor means Frank's immune to grapples, some players wish Kendall wouldn't bother showing up, as they could just rush Isabella back immediately to the security room. Kendall being capable of shooting Frank and making him drop Isabella is not helping his case. However, if you remember that slower is faster when escorting gun-wielding survivors, you can activate Kendall's secret utility, spawn manipulation. So, at midnight on day 3, Kendall spawns alongside the cult hostages. At 1 AM, the gunshop trio would spawn if there was room for them, but there are only 2 free slots, so they have to wait for now. They will spawn if Kendall dies or makes it to the security room too quickly. This brings in the gunshop trio and stops Gil from spawning alongside Floyd's request, since there's no free spaces whatsoever. This means you either have to save Gil or the gunshop trio individually after you take care of the cult, or choose to get everybody and then come back for Susan, an unmarked survivor with a very short scoop duration. Regardless, you're forcing a third trip at a point when time is getting increasingly scarce. But if you wait until 2 AM to bring Kendall and Isabella back in one piece, Gil will have a chance to take one of the 2 free spots, resulting in a very easy rescue and setting up the gunshop trio for the Wonderland Plaza survivors. All of that, however, depends on Kendall. And then there's the character himself. Armed with a shotgun and an escape plan, Kendall is the only survivor who is actively exploring the mall instead of taking cover. It's believed that he was going through North Plaza to look for weapons and survivors to proceed with his escape plan, which serves as the basis for his mutiny, as he finds Frank's helicopter rescue to be too good to be true. All you have to do is talk to him while the time bombs are ticking, making it more of an inconvenience than anything. But compared to the terrified survivors Frank regularly encounters, and the selfishness of Ronald's gluttony-fueled crisis, Kendall is a respectable fighter with an understandable characterization. He has the longest attack range of any character in the game, and a really useful trick to make the final batch of survivors far more manageable. Greg is the most important survivor in the game. The shortcut alone does this, as the ability to jump from one side of the map to the other is invaluable. To say nothing of that other side of the map being where a third of the side quests and the small chainsaw are located. But on top of that, Greg is just a good survivor. His dialogue is simply him thanking Frank, asking about other survivors, and showing him a shortcut. And of course his excitement to see that there's another surviving employee of the Parkview Mall. The actual escort can get a bit annoying since he waits for you if you get even a modest distance away, and his photo opportunity is one of the hardest ones to get the full value of. But man, that shortcut. Even players who ignore survivors will often go out of their way to escort him not just to the shortcut, but even back to the security room since he's just that close by the time you take it. And when going after every other survivor, it turns nigh impossible escorts like Above the Law or Long-Haired Punk into some of the shorter treks back to the security room. Without Greg's shortcut, half of the survivors would be an entire tier lower than their current position. And there we have it. Every survivor ranked. Even bundled by Scoop, that took a hot minute. It was interesting to stop and actually think about the survivors. I always had my favorites and frustrations, but this is the first time I ever put them from worst to best. It was probably weird to ignore the survivor AI given how infamous it is for this game, but that's something I've just learned to work around, and it's something that varies heavily from player to player, so I wanted to minimize its impact. I hope this video was at least a bit informative for some of the details for the Dead Rising 1 survivors. Thank you all for 1,000 subscribers, and thank you for watching. While I do try to make the videos that I would like to make, you guys are what keep these videos worth making. Before duct tape, there was bartending. Yep, before combining weapons was introduced, the first Dead Rising had the idea of combining food items for powerful mixed drinks. Some have claimed that this was even the inspiration for combo weapons, although I haven't found an interview saying so directly. Regardless, mixed drinks did set the foundation for them, and was a rare example of a Dead Rising 1 feature carried into all the sequels, even the 2 downloadable titles and the remake. So, don't they deserve a spotlight as the franchise staple they truly are? For this tier list, I'll be looking at the mainline games' mixed drinks. The remake handles them more like the RE4 mixed herbs, fittingly enough, and neither Case Zero, Case West, nor Off the Record was able to change the rankings for any of the mixed drinks. The 2 main factors for the ranking are the mixed drink effects and the recipes to make them. I'll also keep in mind how the player can increase the effectiveness of drinks through books or level ups. Finally, mixed drink ranking is based on the performance in its respective game. This should eliminate any bias for any one individual entry, allows me to count for how mixed drinks perform in each game individually, and it means that each game's version of a mixed drink is a separate entry. That's all as far as the tier list rules go, but before beginning, this list was made in part as a fundraiser for a friend of mine. Check out the fundraiser down below for the full story, but a buddy of mine is trying to raise money to hire a lawyer for his war veteran grandfather, who had family members steal from his savings and leave impossible bills to his name. There's a link to the GoFundMe down below, I've thrown some money there myself, and he'd appreciate any help. Okay, now on to the tier list. Randomizer is widely considered the worst drink in any given Dead Rising game, and for good reason. While it heals for 8 blocks of health, the name is misleading. You would think it gives you a random mixed drink effect, and it can, but it usually won't. Instead, it should have been called Upchuck, because it will almost always make you throw up. Now in Dead Rising 3, this is at its least impactful because you only throw up once and then move on. So why is it at the bottom, and a rare F tier from me no less? Well, first of all, it's because the extra health blocks don't matter. At all. By the time Nick has 8 blocks of health, you'll already have access to both the natural 50% boost to all healing and the minor health regeneration from the skill tree, so you'll never be able to take advantage of that extra health. Then there's the fact that you're playing Dead Rising 3. You only have 8 inventory slots and books are completely reworked. So mixed drinks are your only real on-the-fly tactical options here. If you're saving a slot for randomizer, that's a slot not going to a mixed drink whose effect you can rely on. Worst of all, however, is that you can't make anything out of randomizer in Dead Rising 3. A mixed drink mixed with anything will only make randomizer, on top of there still being certain food combinations creating this dud. So if you're actually using several mixed drinks in Dead Rising 3, you can easily make randomizer by mistake. Given how quickly mixed drinks are made, it can be easy for a Maxcraft Nick to accidentally turn his Energizer into randomizer because he combined the chicken with the smoothie instead of the pepper. Dead Rising 1's randomizer is a bit harder to make, and that's what saved it from the F tier. This won't be happening by accident. What puts it to E tier is that getting sick is at its worst in the first Dead Rising. Frank gets stomach aches instead of vomiting, so he's vulnerable for much longer, and it happens a lot more frequently after getting sick. And unlike Dead Rising 2, sickness carries over between areas, so there's no getting around the die roll here. That's another problem randomizer has in every game. Its effects are, well, random. Let's say you're even lucky enough to get a mixed drink effect in the first place, which itself is a low probability. It might not be an effect you want or can use. Energizer is only useful if you're in immediate danger. Zombate is only useful if you need zombies to focus on you over other survivors. Quickstep is only useful if you don't have survivors to keep track of, etc., etc. However, randomizer does have two niche uses. First, two randomizers make a quickstep. If you're in a situation where you can repeat your mistake, you can salvage it into something more useful. Second is Infinity Mode, which I did not record, because it requires me surviving long enough to get to Cliff, who drops one after each encounter. Now, as I've stated in previous videos, I don't personally take advantage of the randomizer, but you do spend a lot of time in one place, ideally a safe place, when you're letting your health drain. So the sickness won't be much of an issue if you drink it ASAP, and that extra 8 blocks of health could make a difference depending on which of the books you're carrying. Doesn't make randomizer a good mixed drink, though.
Anyone there?
Zombate is roughly the same in terms of effectiveness in all three games, and it's not particularly good in any of them, so all three are grouped up here. Zombate increases the player's zombie attraction radius and has zombies prioritize the player over other targets. This is easily at its worst in Dead Rising 2, as zombies already prioritize Chuck if he's nearby. There's not many times where getting surrounded in that game is a benefit. It can help with BB Love's mission, but the firecrackers do the job better. Most sweets put into a blender will make Zombate in this game, so steer clear of them when blending. Dead Rising 1 does benefit from Zombate more thanks to how easily overwhelmed survivors can get without guns. But unless you're really good at making use of Frank's skills without hurting your survivors, or you just have some untouchable to work with, this strategy usually just makes the game harder instead of easier. It's also one of the harder drinks to make, with only precise recipes involving corn, pie, or milk crafting it. Giving survivors guns and learning to slow down when escorting them will always be more helpful than Zombate. The drink is at its best in Dead Rising 3 thanks to the kill streak system. Keeping the zombies coming in can earn a stupid amount of prestige points, especially if you're using a super combo weapon. And since any two meat products will reliably make it, it's not that hard to stock up on it if for some reason this is your method of approach. However, making it harder to get away from the horde should your weapons break and or you start taking too much damage is too big of a downside to ignore. A fairly pointless drink in 2, too niche in the first, and too risky for Dead Rising 3. And in every Dead Rising game, you're better off trying to make something else in any situation. Every problem with randomizer as a mixed drink in the first Dead Rising still applies, but two things make it reach out for D tier. First, sickness doesn't carry between areas in Dead Rising 2, so it's very easy to get rid of sickness in the sequel. This means you can get right next to a door, consume the randomizer, throw up once, and enter a new area good as new. This makes Dead Rising 2 the only entry in the series where you can actually take advantage of the 8 blocks it gives you. But the more important detail is how easy it is to make. Mixing beer with hard liquor will make randomizer. You know, beer and liquor, never sicker. But since 2 randomizers still make Quickstep and alcohol is everywhere, randomizer allows you to make Quickstep from pretty much any blender in the game. And Quickstep is what me and my friends call quite useful. While I still wouldn't actively make this drink to consume it, its usefulness as an ingredient is enough to escape the bottom tiers. Nectar is a useful drink in the earlier games, if not top tier, but it doesn't complement how Dead Rising 3 plays. The kill radius of a queen wasn't increased to account for the larger map and increased zombie count. Combine this with inventory being at a premium in Dead Rising 3, and the fact that queens don't stack, and the zombies just aren't all that individually useful. However, the moment-to-moment gameplay of Dead Rising 3 does account for this, by having queens appear in groups of 3 to 4, so when out in the wild, they can still be of use in killing large groups of zombies, and earn some breathing room. Sadly, Nectar did not get buffed, but instead nerfed. Hard. Not only does it still only give a single queen when that's no longer all that helpful, but it's lost its long-term effects. Nectar no longer draws in queens to the player's location, and it no longer increases the odds of a queen-hosted zombie appearing. So now only a single pitiful bug is given, which in and of itself usually won't even be enough to help a stranded survivor. As a result, Nectar's actual use is the healing value. Since mixed drinks in Dead Rising 3 are based on categories, and most fruit only heals 2 blocks of health, Nectar is a net positive when it comes to how much health you get out of it. But that's true of most mixed drinks in the game, and there's no shortage of better options with positive effects. While there's nothing detrimental to Nectar, it's not particularly beneficial. A hard D tier. For whatever reason, Capcom Vancouver decided to interpret Spitfire more literally for the follow-ups. For every Dead Rising title after the original, Spitfire allows you to spit literal fire. In Dead Rising 2, it kinda sucks if you're trying to be practical with it. The breath of fire has less range than your punches, there's a noticeable delay between Chuck spitting and the fire actually coming out, and it doesn't do much damage to boost. Chuck can't be grabbed during the spitting animation, so you're at least safe when using it. That with its high rate of fire is its only positive in 2, otherwise a direct downgrade. Come Dead Rising 3, they would instead make it so Nick gets a flamethrower-like move instead, fixing the range issue and even allowing him to hit multiple targets. That slight delay is still there though, and the rate of fire isn't quite as good. And sadly, like with Nectar, it just doesn't complement Dead Rising 3 that well. Nick needs to either keep moving or keep killing to avoid getting surrounded in this game. Spitfire leaves Nick completely immobile if he wants to attack with it, and its damage, while higher than Dead Rising 2's, can still take 2 full exhales to down a zombie. This is thanks to how fire damage no longer instantly kills zombies in Dead Rising 3, and it will allow them to keep attacking while on fire. Its area of control isn't great either, as convict and football zombies can power through several breaths, and firefighter zombies are just outright immune to elemental damage. The recipes are the saving grace. Dead Rising 2 uses burritos and tacos, while Dead Rising 3 uses booze. So, 2 low-grade food items can be turned into pretty good heals. While Spitfire overall got it better in Dead Rising 3 than 2, both versions of this drink are just fun mess-around items that are better used as healing items, rather than the improvised weapon Spitfire used to be. Energizer works the same in Dead Rising 2 as it does in the first game. 10 seconds of invincibility. It's just that Dead Rising 2's slower gameplay doesn't complement it in the moment-to-moment traversing. And for boss battles, they often do more of a tug-of-war strategy for the first half of the game, when Energizer would be at its most useful. The book to double mixed drink duration does make it more viable, especially for bosses, but bosses having larger health bars means that there's fewer moments of abusing invincibility to land a killing blow. Because remember, with Energizer, you still suffer knockback from any attacks. It can be pretty helpful with Seymour because of just how quick that battle goes, but the invincibility is otherwise just a short-lived convenience in this game. Its recipe is also a bit obtuse, as most combinations involve potatoes, apples, and various meats. You can make one from almost any blender though, so it is readily available. Might come in handy when the mercenaries show up. It's not a bad mixed drink, nothing about it doesn't function properly, but there are far better options in Dead Rising 2 when it comes to a blender. Yeah, Quickstep in the first Dead Rising could be better. It's not useless. An open-world game on a time limit will almost always benefit from triple movement speed. But you only get 20 seconds of it, and getting grabbed is a lot easier in the first game. You'll often fall just short of where you want to go when using Quickstep, and since survivors aren't given the speed boost as well, it's only really useful getting to somewhere, rather than getting back with survivors. Not helping is how the two best places to make one are the food court and Alfresca Plaza, since milk and wine are the two most common ingredients. Since most survivors are in Wonderland Plaza and North Plaza, the player will be ignoring these two locations for most of the game. In fact, I'd bet most quick steps made by the player will come from lucky frozen vegetable spawns in the warehouse, as combining those with the infinite orange juices in Paradise Plaza is just far more convenient. Combine all of this with how you can replace it with the skateboard if you're good at avoiding zombies, and you have a hypothetically great drink that's weak in the knees and shot in the foot. "30 seconds of zombies ignoring you is really useful. So, what is Repulse doing near the bottom of C tier? Simple. It's too difficult to make. Much like Quickstep before it, most of its best ingredients are found in the food court and the Atlantica Casino. Two places the player just won't go very often when going for side quests. Now, Dead Rising 2 does do a better job of spacing its missions out from each other, so taking a detour for some Repulse isn't a crazy idea. But on the other hand, I've gone entire playthroughs without making a single glass of it. Gas zombies are also affected by Repulse, and the safe house will start spawning beans when they show up, so it can be of use there, although ironically it means evading the gas zombies long enough to actually make some, or making it ahead of time, but giving up inventory space for then. However you look at it, it's just not that convenient to make, despite how convenient the effects are, especially with the double lasting book. Ah well. Third verse, same as the first. But you wouldn't think that's possible. How can a mixed drink be too inconvenient to make in Dead Rising 3 with the on-the-fly crafting? Simple, the recipe. Painkiller is made exclusively with medication, which is only found in convenience stores and gas stations en masse, and it needs more medication, sweets, or booze to be crafted. Worse yet, not every convenience store or gas station carries medication either. So while being able to effectively double your health bar is very useful, outside of the fight against Marion, I never bother making Painkiller, especially with how buffed Energizer is in Dead Rising 3. Combine meat with veggies for a mildly useful drink. As the name implies, Nick will regenerate health over time. Unlike the health regeneration from the level up system, regen will work while Nick is in combat, and it can even stack with those perks. Zombies can easily do more damage than regen can passively recover, however, so you can't autopilot with the Horde. That being said, regen is a better option for psychopaths than Painkiller is, both with how it's much easier to work with and how it keeps you sustained in the battle. And if you get hurt while moving around and start driving a car, the health regeneration will give you a free heal by the time you get where you need to go. Oh, a little bit of an exploit in Dead Rising 3. The game only checks if you have the mixed drink book equipped when you consume the drink. So you can equip it, use a mixed drink, and then equip a different book and still reap the extra time. Yeah, it's busted, but a lot of mixed drinks are too short otherwise to make use of, regen included, so I say go for it. Oh yeah, now we're getting to the good ones. If Frank finds 2 bags of chips, he can turn himself into a walking handgun with a bottomless magazine. Almost literally, Frank's spit gangs the damage of a handgun bullet. It doesn't suffer any damage drop-off, but it is affected heavily by gravity after a certain distance. It's also not affected by Frank's level-ups, so its inability to headshot cultists for an instant kill will be a bit of a buzzkill. And against nighttime zombies and faster bosses like Sean or Isabella, it won't be nearly as effective. But given how rare guns are in the game, and how useful it is against the slower bosses and normal zombies, Spitfire is far more useful than it has any right to be, and it's a shame that the sequels could never do it justice.
Oh, Christ.
Weird to put this mixed drink so high, since at level 50 it becomes useless for Nick. Both the level 50 perk for agility and the quick step effect are the same, infinite sprinting. However, when Nick isn't level 50, quick step allows him to quickly maneuver between buildings and alleyways without the aid of a car. While the time limit isn't as important for the standard game mode of Dead Rising 3, what this does to the pacing of the gameplay alone is almost addicting. Plus, there's the optional race against a survivor where quickstep truly shines, if not borderline essential. While it may not be as important here as it is in other games, it's an easy recipe of mixing 2 sweets together, making it very easy to incorporate into just about any playthrough or any build. And given how exploration is 95% of Dead Rising 3, being able to run free without waiting for the endgame or postgame is quite helpful. Oh, you can also give mixed drinks to survivors in Dead Rising 3, and Quickstep actually has a different effect when given to them. It'll max out their movement speed like it did in the old games. I haven't done extensive testing on mixed drinks with survivors in 3 though, so I don't know if there's any practical application of this. Even the weakest version of Untouchable is still good. Being unable to be grappled means there's less stopping and starting when on the move, which in turn means this drink pairs really well with Quickstep. Spoiler alert, that's true for every version of Untouchable, so I won't be repeating that. This isn't as helpful when the gas zombies show up, as they can still vomit attack and their claw swipes can shave Chuck's health off very quickly. But for the majority of the game, mixing together various meats in a blender can keep Chuck going and stop him from getting stopped. And since both Quickstep and Untouchable can be made at the Americana Casino, it's always available when leaving the safe house. This drink got an indirect buff and off the record. Since getting slapped by zombies no longer makes the player drop a heavy items in general just become more useful when Frank is grapple-proof. If gifts for Katie were still a thing in Off the Record, it might have earned a separate rating, but they're not, so it's mostly just for sandbox mode assistance. "10 seconds of invincibility." Why is that more helpful in Dead Rising 1 than 2? Simple. Both zombies and psychopaths are more aggressive in the first Dead Rising, so having 10 seconds of no damage is going to be something players can take advantage of more often. Plus, the cabbages from the warehouse cardboard boxes makes crafting an energizer before a battle or a dangerous encounter far more convenient. So, players will actually have the option to blend together a massive mistake allowance ahead of time. Sadly, that 10-second limit, even if you increase it up to 20 seconds with the double duration book, makes it far too short-lived of an effect to escape B tier. Dead Rising 3 completely reworked grapples. The damage for zombie bites is cut into 2 steps. The first is when the grapple actually connects, and the second half is getting bit, with a QTE between the two for more consistent damage and escaping. As a result, the ability to disable common zombies from grappling you effectively takes away their most dangerous means of dealing damage. Okay, that's true for any given Dead Rising game. It's just that with how Dead Rising 3 is set up, being able to avoid zombie grapples is far, far more impactful. Especially since the grapples are designed to encourage you to get into vehicles whenever possible. And even failed attempts to grapple Nick during normal gameplay can still deal residual damage. So there's an argument to be made that the actual effect is at its most pronounced here. So when Nick is untouchable, he's practically invincible to common zombies. So long as you don't just stand in one place and let them gang up on you. And since the main crafting ingredient is vegetables, they can be made en masse from Elka's food supply after Love Thy Neighbor is finished, if the player happens to be in Ingleton. Its only weakness is that special grapples from the convict zombies and the football zombies can overpower Untouchable. Just be careful around them and you'll be fine. Ah yes, the true Nectar. It has 3 effects in both games. Instantly summons a queen, queen hosts spawn more often, and queens are attracted to the player. The idea of that last effect is that you don't have to devote inventory slots to queens when you have the mixed drink effect. This is more useful during Dead Rising 2 than the first game, since the areas you travel in Fortune City are far larger than the Willamette Parkview Mall, and the queen can actually keep up with you. I'm going to assume you can understand the value of the queen as an item in the series, and the value of finding them more often. So let's go over the individual uses in each game. For Dead Rising 1, it's overtime mode literally requiring 10 queens, so increasing the odds of spawning them makes the worst part of the game go by faster. For Dead Rising 2, Nectar can be combined with the queen to make a secret combo weapon, the Wingman. This allows the queen to sting zombies instead of people, earning 500 prestige points a kill. The player can also have up to 5 of them follow them at once, allowing for absurd level grinding. You can debate which one should edge out the other here. Queens are more useful in the first Dead Rising, but Nectar is more powerful in Dead Rising 2. But in the broad strokes, both are on par with each other while being well above par. Repulse allows you to ignore zombies entirely, and it can last for minutes on end with a mixed drink build. So, how is trivializing the Horde not enough to get into S tier? A couple of smaller details. First is the recipe. Grains are not hard to come by in Dead Rising 3, but without more grains, alcohol, or sweets, you won't be crafting Repulse. And grains themselves are not always where you might think. Many restaurants feature meat, fruit, and vegetables, but no grain items. So, you'll be getting the most out of Repulse when you find a supply of military rations. Second, the effect isn't quite as I described it. What it actually does is lower the zombie detection radius of the player, so any zombies already aggroed onto the player will keep going after them. And at lower levels or with an ill-fit build for mixed drinks, the player can still attract zombies if they stick around one for too long. You can combine Repulse with undead solutions to make yourself functionally invisible at any level, but you'll want your use of Repulse to be preemptive, not reactionary. Finally, without any mixed drink buffs, the effect is too short to make use of in any real manner. That's a problem with most Dead Rising 3 mixed drinks. Repulse is just the most tragic waste. But once you learn to work around these 3 weaknesses, you will trivialize the undead for minutes at a time. It makes it to the top 5, but the 4 above it don't have any of these issues. In Dead Rising 1, Untouchable is the only mixed drink for dealing with zombie aggression, so it's going to shine a bit brighter by default. While it's functionally no different than any other version of Untouchable, Dead Rising 1 is just where it's at its most impactful with the tighter zombie density. It's also really easy to make. The infinite pies in Paradise Plaza allow for as many untouchables as you can carry with you. With how easy it is to stock up on them, and with how naturally avoiding zombies in Dead Rising 1 is just a bit more finicky, especially when escorting survivors, I'm comfortable calling this the best mixed drink in the OG game. There's a few differences between Dead Rising 1 and 2 that make this version of Quickstep top dog. First is the larger map size mixed with slower movement, especially early on, both making triple movement just more valuable. And with the increased zombie count, skateboards are far more risky than they were in the first Dead Rising. Finally, and most importantly, it's the extra 10 seconds Quickstep now gives, as it will now last for 30 seconds of triple speed, which is what I would call the perfect amount of time for a mixed drink effect like this. There's also how easy this drink is to make though. Milk, coffee, coffee creamer, wine, and ice cream all serve as core ingredients for the speed boost, on top of mixing 2 randomizers as I brought up before. Overall, Quickstep can be made from any blender in the game. The only weakness is that survivors are not affected by it. This was fixed and off the record, but survivors themselves were broken beyond repair or tolerance, so it's a zero-sum gain there. Besides, for Dead Rising 2, survivors are pretty competent as long as no looters start attacking them, so unlike the first game, drinking Quickstep and setting a waypoint for the survivors while you go do something else is actually a viable strategy. Another drink from Dead Rising 2 that can be made at every blender, as mixing the 2 same liquors into a blender, besides wine, will give you a mixed drink that cuts damage taken by 50% for a full minute of gameplay. 60 seconds of what is functionally double health and double healing is ridiculous, to put it frankly. From trivializing the damage of zombie bites, to doubling the health gotten from food, to being able to tank boss fights. It takes what is meant to be a weakness, that most of the accessible healing is booze, that makes you sick, and turns it into an easy mode cheat code. Double health is nice and all, but how about just not taking damage, period? Introducing Energizer from Dead Rising 3. Okay, sure. With this specific version of Energizer, there are still a few things that hurt you. Most notably, fall damage and the QTE grapples from bosses can bypass the God mode. But it no-sells everything else, and by default, it now lasts for about 30 seconds instead of 10. However, with a mixed drink build from Nick, mixed drink effects can last for minutes at a time. This can allow the player to take advantage of several of the game's more powerful drink effects until they can find the ingredients to make a new one. But 5 minutes of God mode is far and away the most busted, since there's never a bad time for it, and the recipe is made from one of the most common healing items: beverages. Orange juice, coffee, coffee creamer, milk, soda, water. Any non-alcoholic beverage can be combined with another beverage, some booze, or medicine, making painkiller especially redundant, to turn the player's health bar into a decoration. And there we have it. Each section was pretty short, but mixed drinks are largely independent from the rest of the game. I'd wager that's why they're as good as they are across the franchise. When you remove Randomizer and Zombate, which will probably never be particularly good drinks even at their best, the only mixed drinks that dropped the ball was Nectar in Dead Rising 3 and Spitfire in the sequels, and even these could have been fixed. For Dead Rising 3's version of Nectar, give it a timed effect that triples the kill radius of Queens. It would actually help fix the issue Queens have in Dead Rising 3. For Spitfire in Dead Rising 2, Chuck's normal spit is 1-to-1 like Frank's was in the first game. Just have that spit projectile be a tiny fireball, and you're good. For Spitfire in Dead Rising 3, I say make it ironic and give Nick Ice Breath, simply because freezing zombies is more effective than burning them, and outside of the DLC there are no combo weapons that can do the job of a better version of the fire extinguisher. It would also allow this mixed drink to work on convict and football zombies. Beyond those bumps, mixed drinks have constantly fulfilled their role as power-ups, something that's not really done in others' games like this. They're comparable to the books in that regard, now that I think about it. Oh, in case you're curious, Quickstep is my favorite mixed drink across the franchise. And if I were to add a new mixed drink to a future entry, I'd call it Feel Good, a dark green mixed drink that makes it so the player is immune to sickness, allowing them to consume Randomizer, any rotten food, and/or as much booze as they want. But thank you for watching, and please consider donating to the fundraiser for a war veteran in need.